evening, Publius.
Hey, Rex, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Well, not dead yet, sir.
Good to hear. All right. It's 7:31. So I think we will get going here. Well, welcome everyone to our A&T University. We hold these events every Tuesday night. And under normal circumstances, it's an opportunity for the community to come together and ask questions of Publius or really anybody else that's involved in the protocol. Obviously, this circumstance is a little bit unusual, but in general, the goal here is to continue on in that same vein. So I think what we'll do is to start things off, we'll hand things over to Publius and let them give us an update on anything they'd like to. And we've been watching the questions start to roll into the chat, and we will start going through and talking through those questions once we reach that point in the evening. All right, so with that, I'll hand it over to Publius.
Great. And I think even though we're in the town hall, if people want to come up and ask their questions a la normal class, that's totally appropriate as well. One other thing, which is you guys may have noticed, there's for the first time a third Publius account in the Discord and now up here on the call. So now that there's no reason to be ambiguous about how many of us there are, we figured for simplicity it would make sense to just make a third Publius account. So if you see that going forward, it's Publius number 4443 in the Discord, and hopefully this will make communication a little bit easier for us. Otherwise, looking forward to answering any and all questions. I think there's obviously going to be some questions about looking back, and also hopefully a lot of questions about going forward, what might make sense, and we're thinking a lot about what that is. So, why don't people start raising their hands if you want to come up and ask questions, and I'm sure Rex can also start sourcing some questions from the classroom chat. But let's get this thing going.
Okay. So to hop into the chat to start us off, first question that I saw after I posted the announcement was from Andre Eden, basically asking what's going to happen to Stalk.
So in the context of the idea that was presented last night, whereby based on the amount of money that Beanstalk is able to raise, there's some sort of scaling down or scaling by the factor by which Beanstalk is able to raise capital. So again, if 50% of the capital was able to be raised, 50% of the $76 million, in theory, all of the beans, stock, seeds, pods, BDV, everything would get scaled by 50%. So stock would be included in that scaling, if that makes sense.
All right. And so usually we go right in line with the classroom chat. I am going to skip forward because NASDAQ had a great question that I want to make sure we get cleared really quickly. So NASDAQ's question is about things like governance security. What options have we been looking at? What new changes could be made to governance to help manage security risks in the future?
So ultimately, it's a question of time horizon. There's short-term solutions and then there's longer-term solutions. If you think about short-term solutions and plugging the hole so that Beanstalk can get back up and running, the attack was on the protocol governance. And so in short, the on-chain governance procedure was what was compromised or vulnerable. And therefore, it makes sense as a short-term fix to remove the on-chain governance. Now, Beanstalk does need, in order to have the ability to at some point upgrade to on-chain governance, as well as other upgrades, there does need to be some governance of the protocol. And so the thought is to have some sort of community-controlled multi-sig wallet, which is responsible for custodying ownership of the protocol effectively, such that there would not be any on-chain governance happening until, and this goes now to the longer-term solution, there's a lot of different things being considered in terms of how to perform on-chain governance at this point. Obviously, the previous model was insufficient. And so, it's very interesting. Vitalik even participated in some of the discussion on Twitter and said any token-based governance model is insufficient or something to that extent. And we take comments like that very seriously, which is to say that we're not in a rush to implement another on-chain governance system that's potentially exploitable. So with that in mind, I think we're more inclined to spend a lot of brain power trying to figure out with the community if there is an on-chain governance solution, and we're optimists, so we believe that there probably is one that could be implemented in the future. But for now, in terms of getting Beanstalk back up in a secure fashion, the idea would be to remove the on-chain governance capabilities, which has already been done. So from that perspective, you would expect the security of the contract to be a lot safer going forward.
All right. So Alex was first individual to put up their hand to request to speak. So I brought him up on stage. Alex, you can go ahead.
Hey, what's up, guys? So yesterday, I think, the day before, when you announced the plans, you said something along the lines of, if we raise 10%, then we'll take a 90% haircut. If we raise 50%, 50% haircut. Which to me, this implies that there's going to be a time-bound window during which we raise. So I was hoping to ask, can you talk a little bit about that? Why is it time-bound? What that time frame might look like? And more importantly, why not leave it open-ended? So we can say something like, when we raise 10%, whoever wants to rage quit can do so with a 90% haircut. Whoever wants to stick around and wait for a 50% raise, 90% raise, 100% raise, they're welcome to do so.
So the main reason is because at some point you actually need to turn the system back on, and you can't really have the system resume until the fundraise is complete, if that makes sense. And there's this awkward bound where you say, okay, we're trying to raise 76 million, but it's unclear when to go from raising the money to hitting play effectively. So, or turning the system back on. So in short, why not have it run indefinitely until you raise a certain amount of money? We feel from a game design perspective, it makes much more sense to give people a predefined period with which to participate and then try to design a strong incentive structure to maximize the efficiency, both for Beanstalk to attract lenders under the circumstances and to maximize the amount of capital Beanstalk can attract. So it's, there's no right and wrong here. There's a compelling argument to be made that maybe you should just let the fundraiser run as long as possible until Beanstalk is turned back on. But in practice, don't think that that's going to be the optimal solution.
Can I do a quick follow-up? So one question is, in that case, how long were you thinking to leave it on? And then number two, if we only raise 10% and you can turn the protocol on with 10%, why can't we, hit play then, but also keep raising and just keep adding to it on the side?
Well, in practice, it's like, what does that actually mean? Like at some point, the design for how to have Beanstalk run and have the secondary, refund mechanism, there's a lot of additional complexity that would go into designing something like that. And it's not to say that it's impossible to do, but from a time efficiency perspective, don't think that is something that it's on the efficient frontier.
Okay, I see. It would be worth thinking about, right? Because efficiency is all good, but getting everybody's money is also really good.
But what is even the way
you described it,
right? Like, let's say Beanstalk is back on. The way people are gonna quote unquote get their money back is Beanstalk growing and people starting to receive interest again in the form of Bean Seniorage. The idea that Beanstalk is doing great and now there's still going to be some secondary market for like refunding up to the $76 million just seems like a very strange financial relationship to try to construct, right? Where the Beanstalk is running again, but for some reason it still wants to acknowledge all of this other obligation from the theft that it otherwise wouldn't have to. And so the idea is at some point you just got to have Beanstalk move forward and locking in that there's just going to be this perpetual overhang over the protocol is really suboptimal. So at some point you just got to say, okay, this is good enough. Enough capital was raised to get this thing back off the ground. Everyone's taken a haircut, and now going forward, the system is back up and running. The idea that you're going to lock in some sort of, okay, like we're just going to keep Beanstalk begging for cash here, like that's, I think that would be a mistake for the community to make, to put Beanstalk in that position effectively.
Okay. And as far as timeframes, any rough ideas?
As of now, I think it should be short, like 3 days or something like that. So that's roughly the auction timeline.
3 days is extremely tight, I think. Hopefully we can. I mean, do you honestly think we can raise like even 90% of $76 million in 3 days?
90% is a lot, but the short answer is I think the goal is to let everybody know when this is happening and, create an incentive structure that makes it very, very attractive for people to participate. And, it's unclear exactly how much demand is out there, but from the conversations we've been having, there seems to be interest in this structure.
Okay. Thank you.
And as just a last thought, Alex, first of all, thanks again for all the good questions. Actually have been reading The Infinite Machine and kind of looking at some of those initial coin offerings and historically, I mean, I've been pretty surprised, even as a somewhat of an outsider, at the ability to raise funds. So, I would say that there's certainly opportunities out there where we could potentially see a pretty high percentage of that amount.
Fingers crossed.
Mine too. I appreciate it, Alex. Thank you.
And maybe just to comment, even though it wasn't asked, it's like originally, and on the first call we had a couple nights ago, we were throwing out like $50 million or something like that to get the protocol back up and running. But think that under some of the ideas that were proposed last night, you can really succeed with almost basically any amount of capital, even like 10% of the $76 million. Obviously, there's an intense haircut there, but under this proposal, think that there's really a strong path forward for Beanstalk, independent of the capital that it raises, and that also, at least in our opinion, makes it very attractive for for capital that might be interested. That this is a system that is moving forward no matter what.
All right.
Sorry, I'll just sneak in another real super quick question since we're on the subject. So this, just to confirm, people's stock allocations would stay the same and they would continue to earn at that rate?
I don't understand the question.
So if I had 1,000 stock before, let's say, right, I might take a 90% haircut in terms of my liquidity pools that I lost, my LP or silo contributions, right? So I wouldn't get my $1,000 back effectively, but I would have 1,000 stock, meaning I would get that much part of the revenue that's distributed. Is that correct?
So if you were scaled down 90%, I think under the current idea, both the BDV under your deposit and the stock on top of your deposit would both be scaled by 90%.
Oh, I see. That sucks. Okay. Yeah, it's one thing to basically lose the money that you put in, but it's another thing to lose the earning power that we had allocated, right?
Well, ultimately, that's the idea of scaling the pod line and the stock line in line with the amount of capital that Beanstalk is able to raise, such that the system effectively resets around the amount of capital it has. Now, there is an argument to be made that the system doesn't need to scale at all. No haircut needs to be taken no matter how much capital is raised, but think that's a little bit more of an aggressive position to take.
Why is it aggressive? I mean, that would restore all your current customers, investors, right?
Well, it's aggressive in the proposal that you're making to the capital to participate, if that makes sense. Because you're saying, well, even if you're you need to think about it from the perspective of the individual participants in the fundraiser at any given place in the line, right? And effectively, if you're the first person to participate in the line, if you know, well, if nobody comes in behind me and I only take 1%, well, everyone's going to lose 90%, 99% of their assets, and I'm going to be in great position. That makes it really attractive for the first person to come in. Then if you go all along the line, you have this nice scaling where the protocol, effectively the risk of allocating capital to the protocol decreases as the amount of capital contributed to the fundraiser increases, which effectively should create at least in theory, create an ecosystem or a dynamic where people are starting to contribute large amounts of capital to the fundraiser in an efficient manner. So just think that overall, when we're talking about how do we present this and make this most attractive to capital, if you say that there's not going to be any haircut no matter what, well, then that first percent to come in, that's a riskier proposition, if that makes sense. It doesn't make any difference for the 99th percent to come in that's finishing the round, but it certainly makes it harder for the beginning of the round to take place.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. All right. So Rose is next in line for the request to come up on stage, but in the chat next I had Jams. And Jim's is just saying any status updates on funds committed or conversations with outside investors would be great.
So in classic Beanstalk fashion, like this isn't there's no like term sheet or anything like that. So we never ask people how much they're going to put in or to commit or anything like that. That's never really been the case with Beanstalk. But there's a lot of chatter and people seem very interested in a way that was not the case prior to this happening. So it's kind of crazy. It is crazy, frankly. But in short, don't want to comment specifically or also like make it seem like there's $100 or $200 million of capital busting at the seams to get into this fundraise. But we're encouraged by the amount of interest there seems to be. Don't really have a sense of whether that's $10 million or the full 76. I really don't. But it's not going to be $0. That's for sure.
Okay, so next I'm going to invite Rose up. Rose, you should be up any moment.
Hi, can you guys?
We can hear you. Go right ahead.
Hi there. I have two questions. One is around testing of the code. Or the code was compromised, and that's why we are here where we are today. And I would like to understand what are the plans for making sure that the code is all tested in kind of a virtual machine environment or in a testnet environment to perhaps look for any other vulnerabilities that could cause something worse in the future, if not immediately, as we turn this thing back on. I understand that there were vulnerabilities in some of the code that is definitely going to get addressed, but how is that going to get back tested and verified? And what is going to be the status of the audit when we turn the system on?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. It's important to note that this is not, there wasn't a bug in the code that was exploited, if that makes sense. And so to your point about...
It was a hostile takeover.
Go ahead.
It was a hostile takeover of the governance, pretty much.
Correct. And so there was a design flaw, right? The model had a design flaw that was exploited in practice, and that allowed all of the funds to be stolen. But you're asking kind of two separate questions in practice. One is around testing the code for bugs, which has always been something of very high priority, and thus far, there hasn't been any exploits due to there being bugs in the code. But agree that there needs to continue to be a very high amount of testing on bugs in the code, and that's something that has always been the case. But to the second question, which you are implicitly asking around making sure that there are no other flaws in the model, well, that is one of the. Go ahead.
Yes.
Well, that is one of the reasons why we think it doesn't make sense to go back to on-chain governance anytime soon, basically. And while the on-chain governance model that was in place that was attacked was also audited by Omniscia, we do feel like Trail of Bits, where we do have an audit scheduled in June. We don't think that we're likely going to have the governance mechanism ready for the auditors to look at by then. Based on the conversations with the community thus far, it doesn't seem like the development is going to be able to get a full new battle-tested, rigorously designed, and tested model ready to present to the auditors by early June. But the beauty is Trail of Bits was retained in such a fashion that we have more engineering hours going forward to use. And so whenever the governance model is ready, we did have a conversation with them earlier today. They're prepared to audit all of Beanstalk, save the governance because it's been removed when the audit takes place in June. And then they're ready to audit the governance whenever it is ready sometime down the road. And so to answer your question about how to make sure that from a theoretical perspective, there are no design flaws that are unaddressed, the goal is to make sure that we leverage Trail of Bits, which in our opinion is the gold standard for audits to effectively mitigate as much of the risk there as humanly possible. But again, there is clearly a lot of thought that needs to go into making sure that this on-chain governance model works. That's going to be non-trivial in our opinion.
Mm-hmm. And then there is an assumption that is the only place where there was an issue in the model, right? So, and when the audit is being done, besides looking at bugs and besides looking at vulnerabilities, are they looking at the entire model as well?
Correct.
Okay. And you are feeling completely comfortable with turning this back on with governance turned off. You're that confident that nothing else or worse could happen, especially if the investors are going to be putting their money online.
So at the end of the day, this is a little bit of a judgment call that everyone needs to make for themselves. And from our perspective, it's really a question of, well, what are the risks that need to be evaluated? And if you look at what the potential attack vectors were from a theoretical perspective on Beanstalk prior to this attack occurring, the vast majority of them were from the governance, the governance facet effectively, because it allowed arbitrary changes to the code. And in short, without the governance facet in place, and there being no on-chain governance, then there isn't really the ability to perform any of the actions that would facilitate the draining of funds in the way that has transpired. So in short, there's obviously risk when it comes to adding capital to smart contracts on chain, as we've all had a firsthand reminder of this week. So it's not to say there's no chance that there's not other problems, but it is really important to note that the vast majority of Beanstalk's current code before it was attacked was audited by Omniscia, all of it through BIP 7. And prior to that, the code was totally unaudited. So, to a large extent, we do feel confident in the overall security of the code, other than the governance facet, which was attacked. So, at the end of the day, we're not in a rush to turn it back on, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't, from our perspective, it doesn't make sense for everyone to turn this thing back on immediately, as opposed to, and there's already been a lot of discussion within Beanstalk Farms about how to make sure that the security procedures as a community that are adopted prior to relaunching are just dramatically improved, and that's something that also needs to be taken into account. But from an overall perspective, do think that, the other option, and it's really important to note that this is something that's on the table, and if the community thinks that this makes sense going forward, we're more than happy to pursue this route. Beanstalk can be, restarted after the Trail of Bits audit. Like, they can come and audit all of the code, save the governance facet, which is going to be removed for now, and then Beanstalk can be restarted only after there's a second trail, a second audit done by Trail of Bits, which is, again, like the gold standard for smart contract audits and audits in general, for computer systems. And that's a very reasonable option that the community may want to pursue. The feedback that we've been getting across the board is that time is of the essence and that there's a benefit to moving quickly here. And if you combine that with our analysis of the risk of turning the protocol back on, we think it probably makes sense to move sooner rather than later. But it's very much a reasonable discussion and debate to be had about maybe it makes sense to wait until the Trail of Bits audit to turn the protocol back on, independent of whether the fundraise happens next week or 2 weeks from now. There's no reason why the great restart can't actually happen after the code is audited by a second auditing firm. So that's totally an option as well.
Thank you for answering that. Now, my second question is around some sort of a community training of whatever the proposal. My understanding is there are multiple proposals on the table that one will get chosen and get executed when it gets forked and turned back on, and with a different smart contract. How the testing and thinking through of the entire flow of the users who had their money lost, what things can they potentially do and unintentionally go and do themselves a harm or the system a harm? Because there's gonna have to be some changes you're gonna have to make to the code for people to go and get their funds. Even with the haircuts, don't you guys have to make code changes as it is, besides just forking it?
So there's a couple things. One, upon further analysis, whereas before we thought it would make sense to deploy a new Beanstalk contract, effectively to redeploy Beanstalk with the previous state would be incredibly costly given the size of the state of Beanstalk. And so instead, the thought is that the current Beanstalk contract can issue a new Bean token, and then that the current Beanstalk, and all of its app storage can be preserved, and the state can be reset effectively. So the only work that really needs to get done is to ensure that the state is reset properly, and then whenever the fundraiser is complete and the amount of funds that Beanstalk was able to raise, is determined such that the percentage of the pro rata haircut is also determined. That's kind of the final step of the migration. But in short, there's no the only. That's what needs to happen, if that makes sense.
So it's not per se a code change. It's just replacing the Beanstalk smart contract address with the new one.
Not even the Beanstalk contract address, just the Bean token address.
The Bean token address. Weren't the Beanstalks also compromised?
When you say the Beanstalks also compromised, not sure what you mean there.
Isn't that an ERC20 token as well? And then the exploiter also.
No, so only Bean is the only ERC20 token as of now, and so that will need to be reissued.
Okay. And then the training, as far as training for the existing users, I understand there is a proposal on the table that takes some time constraint into consideration of, say, 100 days. And if somebody was to stay in 100 days, they'll get their whole value, whatever, based on whatever the raise is going to be. So if the raise is like, 25%, for them to get their entire 25%, they'll need to stay a certain number of maximum days in.
It's a little hard to hear you. It's a little hard to hear you. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yes, it is better.
Okay. So how are we going to train our community members to, with confidence, know exactly what they're getting and how to execute and when to execute and setting the expectations appropriately so it doesn't create frustration? There was already a lot of, this is a big loss for a lot of us. Like, a lot of us had our retirement money on there, right? So, and even if we didn't, even if it was a smaller chunk of money, it's relative to your financial situation. It's going to trigger a second wave of stress in people. And training is going to be really, really essential. And education is going to be really, really essential to when the system is turned back on, what are the expectations for the people who got affected? Yeah, besides, what are the expectations for the new users coming on board?
Yeah, I think that's the main thing that the community needs to figure out now is what the course is going forward. And, obviously it makes sense to have something like a snapshot vote based on the stock allocation prior to the attack on actions going forward. But independent of that, there may be people that don't participate in the snapshot or vote against it. But nonetheless, everyone wants it. Whatever course is taken going forward, you're totally right. Their education is, as it has always been with Beanstalk, is paramount. So one of the great things that has transpired over the past couple of days is that the vast majority of people that were working on Beanstalk prior to this attack, have indicated that they have no intention of going anywhere, and their intention is to continue to work with the community and working on Beanstalk. So on the education front, duly noted, I'm sure a lot of those people are in this town hall or class listening now, and everyone is aware that education is first and foremost here. So couldn't be in more agreement there, Rose.
Okay, thank you so much for answering those. I'm very new to this. I literally was on Beanstalk for 1.5 days, and in that 1.5 days, I liked it so much that I invested way too much, and it's been a big pinch, but I've been really stoked and excited to be part of the community and to see the sentiment of the community. I was less than 48 hours into the system and I was studying it right and left. I still don't really understand a whole lot of it, but what I do understand is that Beanstalk may have the models and pieces of an economics for a stable coin that perhaps could be carried over to the real world system. And this economy that that has been running so ineffectively for hundreds of years could potentially could be an positive impact perhaps of something like being the way it's structured. I'm really excited to continue to learn about it. I really hope it survives regardless of me getting my funds back.
Well, Rose, Beanstalk is very lucky to have you, and Jesus Christ, what a rude welcome to the community. But wow, crazy, huh? Well, welcome to DeFi. So this is brutal for all of us, and all I can say though is very grateful for you coming and having these questions and this discussion. And to me, it's a big indicator that there is certainly a path forward for Beanstalk. And even if the next couple months are going to be very rough going, as you said, there's the potential for a larger success story here because of the economic models. And, for those of us that are interested in that, we all hang tight together and work towards rebuilding this ship together. Don't think that vision is ultimately lost. So really appreciate those kind words, Rose, and looking forward to building this together.
Thank you. I think I don't know how to exit here. Somebody's going to let me out of the room so the next person can get in, but this is my...
Oh no. I hope somebody didn't kick Rose while she was mid-sentence. Rose, thank you for coming up. We hope you're still here. Just a couple quick add-on thoughts that I'll say kind of on behalf of, maybe the community team and possibly a little bit wider of a group of core contributors. First of all, I would want to emphasize to this group the amount of time that we have spent over the last, 72 hours talking about security.
I can't hear Rex. Can you guys hear Rex?
Oh, no.
We can all hear Rex. I think it's just you, Publius.
Can y'all hear me? Okay, I'm seeing at the bottom of the chat that
loud and clear.
Loud and clear. All right. So I'll just quickly say, can't tell you how many conversations. Oh, Publius, we have you. All right, I think we got all three of them again. Can't tell you how many conversations we have had around on-chain governance, security, looking at specific dedicated resources, pulling aside, some of our top engineers to try to make, sure that we're looking at every possible way to make this system as safe as possible. And then, that Rose's last point, was especially touching to me, knowing that we've had 19 of these A&Ts and we've heard so much good feedback over those 19 prior, starting with just a handful of folks. And now, usually we were having 50 people per class and having great discussions and so excited about the future. And to have, this series of events just absolutely punch us in the gut. And now looking in and saying, okay, what do we need to do to move forward? I feel like there's a great team that is really working hard to try to make this successful. So looking at, I think what I'm going to do next is, so we've got a couple people in the queue. Man, talk about names I'm going to murder. Edge P. Cool, I'm going to have you come up. You're next in line, and you're going to have to tell me how to say your name the right way. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, can.
Okay, my internet's kind of bad, so if I go out, just kick me out and I'll write the text. It's AJ Peichel.
AJ
hi, everybody.
Peichel, thank you.
Yeah, hi everybody. I hope everybody's healthy, and despite the well, anyway. So before I ask my question, I'll say one of the things you've communicated really well with us. The team has. We hear a lot about what you're thinking about doing. There's a lot of ideas in the community. And we don't always hear about what you've considered and then thrown away. And so I think for myself and for a lot of people, we come up with ideas that are a little bit different than what you've said. We're not sure if it's something that's been approached in the internal conversations yet, because we don't hear so much about the ideas that you have and throw away. I like Alex, I'm concerned about the debt default and the haircuts. That's my main concern. But my main question is, you said that we're not going to turn on Beanstalk, I guess, until we finish the raise. What I'm kind of curious about, what the actual difference between having Beanstalk on and off during the raises. I mean, I'm assuming that nothing will be minting anyway, because the price would be below $1. I mean, are people not going to be able to? People aren't going to be able to exchange beans. People aren't going to have beans. So. I mean, if Beanstalk is really completely off in that way, then there's really no way to tell if the flywheel is moving until we're gonna have this one moment where we finish the raise and we turn Beanstalk on and we hope everything works out and the flywheel turns. Yeah. So is that what it's going to be? It's Beanstalk's going to be completely off. The tokens won't be issued. We're just going to be raising pods, and then one day we just turn everything back on and see if it goes. Can't hear anything. Is it just me?
No, we can hear you. And thank you, AJ.
Yeah, okay.
AJ, can you hear me?
Yeah, no, it's good. Sorry, I finished my question, yeah.
Yep, and we heard it. Publius there? Publius, if you're talking, we cannot hear you. Still can't hear you, Publius. Third time's a charm.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Silo Chad.
Awesome. This is Silo Chad. I'll hop up and answer this question on behalf of Publius. Then Publius, feel free to jump in if your audio works.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can now.
Can you hear me?
Yes. we could.
Okay, cool. Well,
go get him, Silo Chad. Go get him.
Oh yeah, AJ. So there's some technical implications to having Beanstalk running while also doing the fundraiser. Most notably, we need to port over the existing state, or I guess more accurately, roll back Beanstalk to the block before the exploit occurred. And it's a bit tricky to do that while Beanstalk is running and then also have the fundraiser running on the side. For example, we'll be minting tokens to some token vaults after the fundraiser is complete. If we're doing the haircut, we have to do haircut related calculations within the Beanstalk contract. So it just makes more technical sense and is a cleaner operation to do those in two discrete steps. I think one of the Publii can answer that more specifically, but that's my understanding.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
We can.
Sorry about that. I guess it's Wi-Fi issues. I don't really understand. So AJ, in short, as Chad was just saying, it's a technical nightmare to allow the state to continue to change going forward, and then try to migrate over based on a continuously changing state, as opposed to restoring the state prior to the attack and then hitting play. If you allow things to continue to change going forward, it's like, well, what is the state that you're even restoring things to? Now, there is something to be said for, in theory, it would be great if people could trade some of the liabilities of the systems. In this case, it would be pods and like BDV or something like that, or your deposits. But in short, doing any of that would require additional development, and not sure it makes sense to be pushing new code at the moment, if that makes sense.
That does make a lot of sense, and I didn't even consider that. So one of the important things here is technical simplicity, and not creating a whole new technical problem when trying to come up with a solution that is good enough. Which I think actually I was going to have a follow-up question, but I think probably your answer might be the same. But I was wondering if anyone, and again, this is like, I don't know what you have or haven't considered, and I don't know, so has anyone considered allowing the old pod and siloers, after the initial, after the new raise of pods is paid off, to receive a heavier weight of mints to continue, to reduce their haircut if they stay vested. So it would be if they withdraw from the silo, then they take their haircut. But if they stay vested, over a long period of time, they can earn a slightly higher weight of mints to pay them back for the losses, so to speak.
I mean, to some extent, that's already the way Beanstalk works. And then furthermore, the real thing to realize is the goal is to make this a sweet deal for the people that are coming to bail out Beanstalk, So don't really think offering a premium to the people that currently have $0 it makes a lot of sense.
All right. Thanks, AJ. So I guess I'll hop into the chat for the next question. So still relatively high up on the list. We got Lange. Lange asks, why not have the fundraiser market cap? I'm sorry, why not have it market capped? Yeah, let me just rephrase it. Is there a reason that the fundraiser won't be market capped as opposed to time capped?
It will be. The most the fundraiser is going to raise is $76 million in theory, right? Why would Beanstalk try to raise more than that? So it'll be time and capped. Time capped, money capped, it'll be capped.
All right. So as a second question, I'll try to summarize as well as I can. So, Kalandra's second question is there a specific? So Landra asked about the fundraising pods being paid off first, whether or not they will be paid off first, if there's plan to do that, and what is the reasoning around that?
So the short answer is there's no plan at the moment. It's really a function of what the demand is for these pods, and if there's someone that is going to make a really strong case that they'll make a nice offer, but they need some sort of premium. That's something that the DAO might want to consider. But for now, as no one has presented themselves with and made that statement, we really feel like a third makes the most sense. But that could change going forward if someone raised their hand and said, here's $20 million, but the first 10 million pods or 20 million pods need to get paid back first, only to the new pod line or something like that. The first 20 million bean mints.
Okay. All right. So next, I'll invite NPS up to ask their question. All right. Go ahead, NPS. Welcome to the stage. You're still muted, NPS.
Sorry.
There you go. Good to go.
Okay. I also lost money like most of the people over here, but fortunately for me, I did not really invest a lot here. It was probably just testing the waters. But I would be happy to invest more within this new fundraising. But it kind of seems like to me, as I think somebody previously mentioned, like kind of a bailing out, right, of the protocol. I would like to know, like, as a new investor, right, what and why I would like to invest more money over here.
Yeah, I think Beanstalk has a really strong position within the market. It has a long credit history. It has a very clearly strong community, an active set of people that are working on the project that's incredibly diverse, and that's effectively what you'd be bailing out and buying into. So think that's in the grand scheme of things, when you think about what product market fit is in DeFi, think that Beanstalk has certainly demonstrated that, and so that's what you'd be contributing to in effect.
Yeah, but at the same time, right, I feel that, at the end of the day, it's a stable coin, and the stable coin need to have much more purpose to it than just the liquidity, right? I kind of don't see that with Beanstalk at least, and that's why I probably never invested a heavy amount over here. As far as the utility of the Beanstalk is concerned, I don't see that utility out there. Maybe you want to kind of speak something to it, how we can probably build some utility around the Beanstalk itself or beans itself, so that there is much more value to the bean than just being kind of a liquidity pooling curve.
Yeah, it's funny, right? These were the questions we were answering about a week ago before this happened, around furthering the product market fit for beans, and in short, though, would push back a little bit that just providing liquidity is not product market fit, particularly in the early stages of the game. And by early stages, I mean from launch basically until Beanstalk has tens of billions of beans. The primary use case for beans is probably going to be providing liquidity to other assets. And why is that? That's because the vast majority of other stable coins have an implicit or explicit negative carry cost. And if your asset is trading against an asset with an implicit or explicit negative carrying cost, that's going to reflect itself in the cost of your token. So just in terms of what is product market fit for Beans currently, before there are good crypto payment rails and things like that, providing liquidity, in our opinion, is something that makes a lot of sense from a utility perspective. So to further that, there is a lot of development that was happening prior and in theory should continue to happen after this thing is back up and running to further generalize the silo and make Beanstalk and Beans the number one liquidity provider in DeFi. But that is going to take a little bit of a backseat over the next couple of months to getting this thing back up off the ground.
Okay, that's great. I just wanted to hear your thoughts around it. Thank you.
Thank you, MPS. Okay, to hop back into the chat. So, Mew Mew asks, what response have you received from Omniscia outside of their public statement? Weren't they on retainer? And what was the scope of that retainer?
So, two questions there. One, what did we hear from them? Well, let me see if I can pull it up. They reached out to us, basically once it happened, and sent us their post-mortem and asked us to basically set the record straight and acknowledge that the code that was attacked was not audited, which, as we've previously said, in our opinion, is pretty disingenuous, given that the emergency commit function and the model to acquire stock was in Beanstalk from the beginning. So, the code that was attacked, they certainly audited. So we didn't really respond to them really substantively because what's there to talk about if that's the position they're taking. But with regards to your second question about the retainer, so originally, and want to be careful because we really don't like to talk poorly about people, but when we signed the retainer, basically our understanding was that was going to facilitate them to kind of make us a priority client, such that whenever there was new code to be audited, they would be ready to do it immediately. And we thought that was pretty clear when we were figuring out what the retainer should be. And of course, now anytime we ask them to look at code, it's like, oh yeah, we can look at it next month. And that's pretty, when we talk about trying to get like the current version of Beanstalk audited, the problem is trying to catch up effectively because there's been so much code written over the past couple of months that by the time they look at the code, then they send us the preliminary report. Then there's the back and forth of fixing any of the things. It's like a 4-month process. And so while they were retained, none of the work that they could have done under the retainer was started because of how long it took for them to complete the first audit effectively, if that makes sense. So the original thought was once the first audit was complete and they had already taken a look at the code, they could then start to rapid fire look at the rest of the code. But, that was not the case. So the only good thing is Beanstalk Farms never paid for any of the retainer. So it still has those funds, that USDC, which is nice in theory. But otherwise, it was too bad because obviously from our perspective, that was money that would have been very well spent. But, Omniscia couldn't make it happen effectively.
Okay, next I'm going to invite Mr. Yukon Cruz up to speak. Okay, go ahead.
Hello.
Evening.
What's up, Manny?
Oh, sorry. 1 second. For some reason, it's not connecting properly. I can barely hear you guys.
We can hear you pretty well.
Oh, this is really annoying. Give me 1 second. If there's somebody else that wants to go first, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, that's fine, Manny. Hop down off stage. I'll have Viru come up.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you, Manny.
We'll let someone else go first. Sorry about that.
No worries. Go ahead, Viru. Viru, you're on mute. Viru, you're on mute, just to let you know.
Manny, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Manny.
All right. So, well, first of all, I wanted to say I listened in on the call yesterday, and the first thing that I thought was that basically trying to get rid of the financial overhang through the method that you're doing, I think makes a lot of sense. I think speed is of the essence, so I fully support you guys in doing that. And I know it's painful, but there's value to getting that out of the way and then rebooting the protocol in a back into a healthy state. So I know as I said, it's painful, but I highly support that. The second thing I wanted to say was if you guys need any sort of support in terms of connecting with people that might be supporters of the protocol or other folks that might be helpful, feel free to reach out. I run a separate project that is VC funded, so there's a variety of folks that I know that might be helpful for that. So I just want to be here to help you guys as much as possible. And then the third thing I wanted to say was really just a question. I was wondering how you plan on auctioning off the new line of pods. Is it going to be kind of a Dutch auction kind of style, or were you planning on something more like along the lines of copper? I think, clarifying that would be super helpful. Also in terms of like finding people that would be good supporters of the protocol. So that's all.
So there's a million ways to do it, but we think that the goal would be to do it in a way that basically makes it such that the model, the normal Beanstalk model is really on full display, but implementing it in full, like a true measurement of demand for soil and such, that's technically intensive. And so it's like, how can you do like a 70% version where you get a lot of the similar economic incentives, but basically it's very simple to implement. The thought is, let's say there's this predefined 3-day period. The weather, because this is a new pod line, so the first people to sow are at 0 in the pod line. They're going to be the first people to get paid as soon as the bean supply increases once. It's unclear what the weather should be. And so in order to have Beanstalk attract demand for this soil efficiently, the thought is it should start at basically 1%. And then very quickly over the course of 3 days, increase over time. So the thought is every 10 minutes, let's call it, the weather will increase 1%. And over time, you'll have this nice dynamic where people start to accept the weather as it gets higher and get in line. And as the more people get in line, the system kind of de-risks. So the weather's getting higher and the risk is coming down. And therefore, you'd expect the amount of people that are participating to increase over time at some point. So the idea here is to create an efficient way for Beanstalk to attract as much capital as it can without overpaying overall, and putting some sort of cap on the overall amount that it could pay.
Got it. And so, so it's a little bit like a streaming auction, right? Like if I buy a bean or a pod, at a certain weather or interest rate, I kind of lock that in for myself. Because what I was thinking is it reminds me a little bit of like the MISO model, right? Where in some ways kind of the price rises, so people might want to pull out, if you get a lot of demand that's kind of chunky later on in the auction. Would that cause the weather to go back down?
That's the beauty of the first in, first out model. It's like ultimately, and there is something that changes the more people that participate, which is the haircut. But again, as we talked about a little bit earlier, the first people that participate, if there's no one that comes in behind them, they recognize everyone's going to get a massive haircut. Whereas the more people that come in behind them, there will be less of a haircut, but then they'll be at the very front of the line that's very likely to get paid off, if that makes sense, because the system has been able to attract enough capital. So you have this nice dynamic where, in theory, no matter when you participate in this new pod line, you're aligned with the future growth of Beanstalk.
Got it. But just to clarify, so the weather that you buy the pod at when you join this sale is kind of locked in. Is that? And I was just going to
the traditional Beanstalk model, where at the time that you lend, you lock it in.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's okay. So that's a streaming auction model, which I think makes a lot of sense in this case. I totally agree. I mean, originally I thought you guys were going to try to recapitalize based on revenues of the LP tokens, but I think this is actually really clever and really uses features that are unique to your protocol. So, once you guys have a document ready, I can't wait to see it. This sounds great.
Thanks, Manny. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. I know it's really, really tough. I've worked with teams that have gotten hacked or gamed, and it really sucks. But guys, just carry on. This is great work.
Live to fight another day.
Yeah.
All right, Virut, I think you are good to go.
Sweet, thanks, guys.
No problem.
Kind of following on from the question earlier, and maybe it's easier for some people to get a bit of an ELI5 here. So, if you had 1,000 pods previously, and this is kind of, I guess, second part to Alex's question at the start of the meeting, is like, if you had 1,000 pods in the past, for example, are you now again beginning from zero, and then you have the opportunity to buy pods again, or what exactly is the mechanism there? Sort of, following on from Manny's question.
So to clarify, the thought is that the old pod line is going to be preserved, but scaled down based on the amount of capital Beanstalk is able to raise. So if you had 1,000 pods,
so it's the same as Stalk.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone gets the same across the whole system.
Work. Okay, right. Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's pretty much it. But yeah, cheers, guys. You're doing a good job. Look forward to what comes next.
Thank you, sir. I like your Bean FT very much.
Thanks very much.
That is a nice Bean FT. So, okay, before we bring the Black Knight up, so got a couple longer paragraphs from Long Live Bean and Long Live. I'm going to do my best to summarize. So the first part of Long Live's question or concern, let's say, is around the individuals that bought Bean post exploit with the idea or understanding that purchasing would give them an opportunity to arbitrage up. Is there any consideration for those individuals, or any thoughts about how to manage the loss that someone might have experienced by buying post exploit to arb upwards?
The short answer is there's no good answers across the board, and whatever way we as a community decide to go forward, like there is some aspect of some people are getting different treatment than others. That's the nature of choosing here, right? Like, things have happened and now there needs to be choices made. So at the end of the day, though, the problem is, the question being asked is, should the people that bought beans after it was crashed to 0 cents and you bought it for 0 cents, should that be honored? Well, the main thing to realize is the beans that were bought are beans that were sold by the attacker. And so you had all of these beans that were drained from the silo, stolen, and then sold. And so in fact, there's all of these beans that were sold that now, with the plan to move forward, would be in theory to issue a new token, issue those same beans based on their distribution prior to the attack. And so the question is really about issuing the same beans twice. Are you going to issue them based on their current distribution, or does it make sense to have them issued based on their distribution prior to the attack? And it's like, well, it's one or the other. It can't be both. And the whole point here, it seems to us, the whole point here is to try to restore the state of the system to what it was beforehand.
Okay. All right. So next, we'll bring the Black Knight up on stage.
How
Go ahead,
fellas?
Black Knight.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. Go ahead.
Yeah, good one. So just it's about is it safe to say that you're looking for VC funding, or is it going to be a public sale?
Well, the long and the short of it is the idea for this fundraiser would be to be an on-chain, like Beanstalk would just be issuing pods, the same as normal. So however you want to define that is what it is. Now separately, we as we've said before, if someone was interested in taking the majority or all of the $76 million deficit and trying to cut some sort of deal with the DAO, independent of the fundraiser, that would certainly be something that the DAO should consider. But this plan that is being discussed, it would be one that would be under the assumption that there's no omnibus, check coming from a single entity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. Because I mean, I've been following the conversations, a lot of the conversations, and maybe I've missed a few parts. It's just, it's been discussed that you're looking at a 3 days kind of sale. But to me, if we start kind of speculating on having a 3 day sale, to me that means that there's some confidence levels that there's going to be X amount of buy-in. For example, obviously there's a lot of people that have kind of said, yeah, they're keen to kind of buy in, but that to me is a bit of a grey area, because it'd be nice to kind of understand, and maybe these are conversations that's happened in the tent in regards to there's confidence levels that there are some VCs on the sidelines here, and they do have X amount of cash to kind of throw in. I'm just a bit concerned about this 3 day kind of window, because if I mean, obviously confidence is high, but people have lost money, right? So there's going to be less money to kind of throw in. So if that 3 day window doesn't really kind of provide the funding that it was expected, kind of, is there a plan B? Sorry for all the questions all in one.
No plan B as of now.
Okay, so okay. I'm just a bit curious about. So it's literally first in, exactly the same way. If someone's got throws $1 million in, right? Is it going to be kind of maybe it's too early to say. You open the doors, that $1 million goes in. They're first in line. It's going to be pretty much first in, as simple as that. Is that the kind of plan?
First in, first out. Same Beanstalk model we all know and love. That's what we think makes sense.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I think that pretty much covers in this. So there's definitely going to be no tiered model, because there's no structure around funding, etc. I was just thinking from an incentive perspective, I thought it'd be an idea just to actually have a bit more incentive for VCs to kind of buy in. I understand it needs to be flat, and that's the way the tokenomics works for Bean, but it just seems a little bit kind of flat. Where are the incentive for people to put in, say $1 million, for example?
Yeah, again, I think at the scale of $1 million, it doesn't really make sense for Beanstalk to cut any special deals. At the scale of $20 or $30 million, it makes more sense. But the short answer is, Beanstalk demonstrated a very strong ability over the past couple weeks to attract millions of dollars into the system. And obviously there was this attack, so something has substantively changed. But the long and the short of it is we're inclined, we think it probably makes more sense to continue to lean on the core of the model, independent of the amount of capital that needs to get raised, and see how it goes, basically.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not debating the actual tokenomics of the model. I mean, it's awesome how you guys have built this out. It's an amazing protocol. There's no doubt about that. But with the latest kind of situation, right? It's just kind of, and I understand that you guys are probably entertaining a number of different things. I'm from GDAO. I've gone through a rug. I'm part of the Governor DAO team. With model LGEs and to kind of to introduce and trying to kind of incentivize, people kind of throwing money at this. You see, if there's a flat model, it just seems like there is going to be a limited buy-in in regards to that. So I'm just trying to make sure that there is some level of incentive.
You're saying like a bonus, like if you sow $1 million or $1 million USDC, you get an extra 2%. You sow $5 million, you get an extra 10% or something like that.
I think entertaining some kind of tiered model will definitely kind of up the incentive a little bit. I mean, it's like any.
It's actually a very interesting idea, sir. That's a great thought.
Thank you very much.
That's a great thought.
Yeah. So I mean, because I'm thinking,
that's fabulous. There's no reason not to include that in the model, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. Yeah, because the way I look at it is that we've all lost a lot of money, right? But not one. My circumstances are fairly kind of unique in regards to. I was actually I was under a fish wallet attack, literally a week before. So I pretty much lost a lot of my money. I managed to get my funding off of Bean through some. Through certain methods, right? And I actually reinvested pretty much what I'd lost plus more the day before. So my portfolio has taken a serious whack. So I do have funding, but just being in a situation where I can actually get not a discount, but just understand if there's a tiered model in place. It just means that, there's just more incentive, that's all. So I'm not going to bang on about it. I'll just pitch my case. I do feel that will offer, a non-one-size-fits-all kind of entry level for some people. So thanks for your time and listening to me. It's fantastic. And yeah, great. I really love the project. I'm buzzing about the future, and I love the way that you guys have kickstarted so quickly and kind of are keen to kind of hit the ground running and keep the momentum there. It's a big part of the recovery.
Thank you, sir. It takes a village, and you're doing your part. These ideas are great.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Black Knight. Great information, great questions. Definitely appreciate the input. All right. So before I bring Lemon One up, I'm going to grab a question out of the chats, and this is AJ, and just asking: are we going to continue to negotiate with a hacker, potentially raising the reward?
I mean, we haven't heard from them, so there's no negotiation. But, in theory, if there was a price, it's like, well, I'm sure the DAO would be interested in talking, but they're not talking, so.
And actually, speaking of, can someone verify? I saw a tweet, and actually I retweeted it, from the Ukraine saying that they wanted to return the $250,000 that they were given.
Yeah, I saw that too. That's how you know you're down bad. The Ukraine is giving us money back.
No, I'm not saying we're down bad. I was getting misty eyed, thinking that, folks that are trying to literally stave off a Russian invasion are being that, I'm going to use the term selfless. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Like I said, I was getting a little misty-eyed over Twitter, which probably is the first time I've ever used that phrase, now that I think about it. All right. So before Lemon one more question, just because, man, they're just stacking up in the chat. And this one, I'm not going to say it's softball, but I'm going to say it's one that won't take a lot of thought to answer, probably from Thirst Cow. They're just asking, mentally, how are you doing, Publius? All of you.
Well, I'll just speak for myself. I mean, there's a lot going on, but that was the case before the attack. So, the real thing to me that's been uplifting, and it really started yesterday where I just woke up so full of energy, was it's very clear that people care, and they don't just care about Beanstalk, and they don't just care about us. They care about the credit-based stablecoin model, and people think it matters, and that is worth fighting for. And I mean, nothing could get us more excited than people realizing what we believe to be true, which is that a credit-based stablecoin model is something that would be really important for all of DeFi. And so, how am I doing? I'm excited. It's been very stressful what's been going on. Talking to the FBI is very stressful. But this is there's an opportunity in front of all of us, and I'm an optimist, and I'm very excited to pursue that opportunity together.
I want to open up for the other two, Publius, as well, if they want to share how they're doing. If not, that's fine.
Yeah, was a very sad time, a couple of days ago, and every day since, kind of have woken up more optimistic, feeling better, and really excited about the potential, the Beanstalk Farms team and the community as a whole has to kind of bring Beanstalk back. And life hasn't really changed much. It's just wake up, code, go to bed, and that's not changing. So, really grateful for everyone out here, and, really excited for what's to come, and, really excited to, as a community, give this our best shot to kind of bring Beanstalk back.
Yeah, echoing, what's been said, it's been tough, but at the same time, the reason why we keep going is, the community and all, your thoughtful words have really kept us going, and really makes us, want to continue to work with you all, to continue to, to make the best, make the best possible product happen.
And as just to latch onto the back of that, I want to give a big shout out to the core contributors. We talk about like department heads and our full-time employees, many of whom have had over the last X number of hours, last 2.5 days, have had significant investments lost, and at the same time been told, hey, so that money that we had to pay you for your job, we don't have that right now. And to see this team of core contributors essentially say, you know what, that's okay. We believe in the mission of the protocol. We believe in the team. We are willing to do what we need to do to make this thing work. I mean, again, talk about like moving moments for me. A lot of them have happened in some of these meetings with these core contributors that are just saying, what do we need to do? Whatever we need to do, let's do those things. And just really, really, really touching. Couldn't be more proud watching this team move. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the number of people that have raised their hands and said, we're ready to work. It's like, geez Louise, Louise, thought everyone needed a job, but I guess not.
Yeah. I just, continually amazed by the by the folks that have been willing to just dig in and keep moving. So, all right, we'll invite Lemon One up. Man, I say this every time we have class. If I ever murder someone's name, to AJ, I apologize again. I'm going to keep doing it every time we have class, and I guess it's just a running theme. Listen to Rex murder your clever name. So, Lemon One, you should be coming up now. All right. Oh, Lemon One, you're up. Go ahead.
Could you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanna. It's pretty small. I can hear the voice. Why is that? Hello?
We can hear you.
Yeah, I cannot hear you.
Oh no.
Okay, I can hear you now. So the question is about. I think somebody already asked. So I bought some of the bean after the hike. Because I thought the project should be able to go back. So I don't know. Like I bought a lot of the bean like just after the hike. So I don't know how those bean gonna be like in my wallet, like will be how it will be traded.
Yeah, as we were saying before, it's very tricky. And the DAO needs to decide which way to move forward, basically.
Like, do you guys have a decision yet?
No, everyone's going to vote on it in a couple of days, it seems.
Got it. Yeah. I think that's. I mean, we didn't say any announcement, right? After the hike that nobody should buy the bean because it's gonna be worthless, or what, right? So that's why I bought it. So I think community or the contributor team should have that consideration, that not just the hikers, or I think some community member just like me also bought the bean after the hike because hold the view that bean's gonna come back someday. So kind of like make a when bean is done and buy a lot of bean to make a bets on this project go back. So I think that's kind of like a very legitimate and also use real money to bought like ETH. So I think that part of the community members should also be considered.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you raising your voice, and this is all about what class and the town hall is all about.
And I've taken that note as well. I mean, this is an additional group of individuals that admittedly, until we started seeing the comments come in the classroom chat and folks hop up, admittedly, I had not considered the fact that there would be ongoing trading, outside of what the hack was trying to do. There are a lot of folks that are from the core contributor team that are in this call right now. I think this is something that we can take as a note and start to put our heads together and see if there's anything that we can do to, to figure something out for this group that's been trading post exploit. Okay. Looking down through so Helon, I see you next in line. Before I bring you up, I'm going to go with this question from, again, a name I've seen many, many times, and I'll murder when I say it out loud. Puissance. So the question is, to Publius, what has your experience been like after doxing yourselves?
I mean, nothing too crazy yet. No one showed up at my door with a machete. And, some people from college reached out saying they had no idea you guys were working on Beanstalk. How can we help? But otherwise, tree falls in the forest and no one's there. It's like, yes, nothing. The rest of the world hasn't really, I mean, I guess that's not fair. There's been a lot of coverage, but no, it hasn't really. I mean, at least for me, it hasn't felt like there's been any substantive change from being doxxed, other than a little bit less tension. I mean, I guess that's nice, right? Not to have to be like living this weird life of like, you know, spending 10, 12 hours a day on the phone as Publius all day. Like I mean, I guess technically that's still what we're doing, but now you guys know who we are. So it's a little bit less, less of a mind fuck on this end. But otherwise, business as usual, basically.
Okay, I got a quick legitimate question. I've meant to ask this when we've been like recording podcasts or whatever. Like, what did you all tell people you were doing? I've been wondering this for months.
Wait, can I tell you something funny? So,
yes,
last week because we spend some of our time I float all the time, but I was down in Miami, or happened to be in Miami during the crypto week a week or two ago, and there was an event with like a bunch of people that I've known for 5 or 6 years in the crypto space that I was invited to and signed up to go to, and I got dressed to go to it, and then it was time to go out the door, and I was like, shit, I really don't know what to tell people I do all day, and I just didn't go to the event. I didn't go because it's like I haven't really told anyone what we do. It's like, what do you? Yeah, we were hanging out with some people a couple weeks ago, and they were asking us, what do we do? And we were just like, yeah, like we're in crypto. And they were like, so no, what does that mean? And we're like, yeah, we can't really say. And there have been some weird conversations like that. So at least now, hopefully, that will be avoided to some extent.
Yeah, I had that thought after we recorded a podcast, one of the Bean Pods here a few weeks back, and I thought I need to ask them what they tell people they do all day, because somebody's got to be out.
I mean, the only people we really talk to are Beanstalk people, so there's no one to tell about like, oh, here's what we're up to. It's like, no, I'm just sitting at my computer talking to you guys all day.
Right, fair enough. All right. All right, next we'll have Helon come up. Helon, I'm inviting you now. Helon, I know how to say your name because I've heard you say it.
Awesome. I'm glad you got it right. So 2 questions. One, would the prior funds be locked up after the fundraiser for some period of time, or is it just going to be a free-for-all? And then I'll ask the other question after.
Definitely don't want a free-for-all. The thought is that in theory, you could withdraw immediately, but there will be some time-weighted vesting where if you withdraw on day 1, you burn 99% of your, what you might be otherwise entitled to. And, if you wait till day 2, then you only burn 98%. Wait till day 50, you burn 50%. So it would take 100 days for you to be entitled to all of the funds. So there's no like immediate, way for everyone to just run for the exits effectively.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. And then the other thing, what if there just wasn't a fundraiser and you just turned it back on and then people could sell day 1 at like 1 cent and then people could just buy each other's beans and then...
Man, you're my type of guy, Helen. Jeez Louise. If I haven't had that thought, I'd be lying to you. The long and the short of it is you could reset the state and literally just turn Beanstalk back on, but then you have this weird circumstance where you have all of these pods and all of this stock and no BDV under the stock. So it's like there would have to be some weird case where, to date, it's important to note, the only way to have stock is to deposit value, right? And the only way to get that value back is to burn the stock. But the idea is now, if we continue just going forward, you have stock with no value under it. And so you would never really, there's no, that stock isn't providing any value to Beanstalk going forward. So other than just trying to honor that obligation, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, there's probably a good argument to be made. You should just turn the system back on and let it run and see if it works. I'm more inclined to think that a strategy of trying to infuse a large amount of capital in a short period of time before that is better due to the nature of the deficit that Beanstalk faces. But there's certainly an argument to be made that you should just let the thing fucking run and let it do its work, and it'll work. I would note that the weather being at 5,800 isn't the best for something like this, where it could take a couple weeks to return to peg, but it's like, yeah, who knows? Who knows? There are no right answers here. There are a lot of wrong answers. Don't think that's a wrong answer though, but we kind of got to just choose a path collectively, but that's certainly a path worth considering.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, as long as there's a time like lockup for the raising of the money, then I think either path would work pretty equally. Although the fundraiser might work better. But yeah, sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Elon. All right. Looking through the chat. So Jake Smith is next in the chat, and it's a question that has already been asked, but I'm going to answer or ask it again, even if it's just a quick answer is nothing to add. Jake asks, do you have any concerns about security prior to relaunch? Any steps you plan on taking before the launch to uncover any other security issues?
So I think we covered a lot of this, but would just restate that the open question that should be debated and ultimately voted on is whether it makes sense to relaunch before or after the Trail of Bits audit. It is worth noting the Trail of Bits audit is scheduled for the beginning of June, and it's 3 weeks. So we're talking about end of June, early July to restart if it's post Trail of Bits. So that's something the DAO definitely should discuss.
Do you think that is so? If there was in that discussion, do you think the potential of a fork should be a consideration if we were to delay?
I don't understand the question.
So, do you think that if we were to delay relaunch until after Trail of Bits, do you think that there is a greater chance of someone attempting to essentially replicate the project?
Hard to evaluate the exact marginal increase in chances, but would guess that that's probably true, particularly if it's apparent that Beanstalk is just not being turned back on for 3 months, but would say, it's probably going to take someone a long time to do that, to fork Beanstalk, speaking candidly. So, and as we've said before, we feel like the credit history and the community, that's worth everything basically. And so, if you want to fork Beanstalk, be my guest.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of those conversations that we've seen and taken part in over the last couple of days about that potential. Yeah, I mean, that's a big component, is that you can replicate the code, but again, we're talking about core contributors that are, working unpaid and working tons of hours and, really busting their asses to try to make this thing successful. And you can't control C, control V that. And then, I think the other side is that it does seem like that's part of the motivation from the community to try to keep this process moving, would be to potentially to limit that exposure. Okay. Oh, good.
No, go for it. Let's
yeah, I was gonna. So, man, another name I get to murder. So, Asegis, I'm gonna pull you on the stage now. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you again for inviting me to come back up and speak. I just want to break this down in the way that I like to think about things. So the thing that is most important at this stage is the fundraising part of this whole part. So the goal obviously is to make somehow $76 million of capital somehow. So
see, just you're cutting in and out a little bit, just to let you know.
Obviously, it's
see, just we're only hearing 10%. All right, we'll give just a minute to come back. While we're waiting, I'll hop back into the chat. So C-Man 3, kind of a similar question to what we've seen already. How's capital sourcing coming along? Anything you want to add, Publius?
No, gonna leave it at what we said before.
Fair. Talked about it quite a bit. All right, so Sleepy Bean asks, how confident are you to get all 76 million back in the fundraiser, which I know has kind of been covered already. But the second question, do you have any more details on the plan since yesterday's announcement?
So I don't even think it's about confidence we fill the 76 million collectively. I think it's confidence that no matter how much is filled, there's a path forward for Beanstalk. And that's what gets me excited. The only substantive update to the plan is really Black Knight's idea to have some sort of bonus for the larger the sow, and B, the structure where the idea is to have the weather increase every 10 minutes or so. That was thought of this morning. So other than that, though, no real updates.
All right. And I see Aegis is back. I'm going to invite you back up. Just working on the cell phone. Let's have you back. All right, let's give him another shot. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, much better.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Oh,
yep.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to paraphrase the very first beginning part. The goal is to raise 76 million. Let's just put that as the goal. I know that's not going to be exactly 76 mil. So we get 70. So you guys sell 76 million pods at $1 a piece. That's the most you're ever going to get. So we're never going to get 76 million. I think that's totally fine. And I appreciate all the thoughts about how to get 76 mil. If we're short, that's totally fine too, because it will be short. So in my opinion, there's going to be people that are going to need to take a haircut. I'm going to give everyone a little perspective. I know that people were saying that I didn't have any skin in the game. I had about 2.7 or 2.8 mil in stock when the hack happened. So I did have, and I put the money in the day before. So, I mean, that's, I do have skin in the game, and I'm going to take a haircut, which is fine. So my opinion is that the pods that are sold need to go to the front of the line. And the reason is this, and I'll tell you who pays for this, right? So the 76 mil, people need to bid these pods up. It doesn't matter what the team decides, but they go to the front of the line. Let's say you can get like 90 cents a pod at the front of the line or 95 at the very beginning. And then after all those things are sold and the auction's done, whatever percentage, let's say we get like, I'm going to be optimistic and say we got 70 million, which is about 90% of what we wanted to raise in capital. You take a haircut on my 2.7 million stock by 10%. You take 10% off of everyone's pods that are at the back of the line after the 76 million pods were sold. And everyone sort of takes a hit, and it's even. And whatever is sold is sold. Let's say we only sell 36 mil. I lose half my stock. The people behind me, behind the 76 million pods, lose half of their pod value, let's say, that they had before. And I think that this has the best opportunity to raise the capital, because that's the ultimate goal here. In my opinion, right now, the most important thing is trying to raise as close to the 76 mil as possible. And everyone should take a haircut. The stock owners, the pod owners, all those people, in my opinion, are equally in this game together, because the people who bought pods wanted to speculate that they could turn that into a 10, 20x or 2x or whatever, 5%, whatever you want to call it. So I think that is a good strategy to raise the most capital. And I think that's the ultimate goal. All the other stuff is sort of like, the details are important, but that's not what's most important right now. So what do you guys think about that?
So not sure I understand, other than you saying that the new pod should have some additional priority. I don't know if I understand the difference between what you're proposing and what was discussed last night.
So I thought you guys weren't going to put the 76 mil pods right in the beginning. Well,
first off, it's not 76 million pods. It's 76 million soil that will, in theory, be exchanged for some pods that will be at least 76 million pods. It'll be more than that. The thought is that there will be a new pod line that will be parallel to the old pod line, such that starting at the front of the, going forward, any new beans that are minted, 1/3 will go to the new pod line, 1/3 will go to the old pod line, and 1/3 will go to stockholders.
I see what you're saying now. Okay, I was confused. Okay, all right. So 1/3 will go to the new or the old stockholders, or the new. What happens to the stock that happened, or for the people that had the stock previously?
So everyone gets a haircut, right? Let's say it's 50%.
Sure.
Pods get 50% haircut. Stock gets a 50% haircut, and the BDV associated with that stock or those deposits also gets a 50% haircut. So if you had deposited beans with stock on top of it, you now have half as many deposited beans with half as much deposited stock. If you had deposited LP tokens with a BDV of $100, you now have BDV with of $50. And if you had stock of X, you now have half of X, if that makes sense. So everyone, pod, stock, across the board will get the same pro rata haircut.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting, but okay, how is that different than if you were to sell like pods in front of the line, right? Because people want something that I know that the soil concept is.
So the ordering of the line is different than the haircut, right? The haircut has to do with limiting the obligations of the system. Right now, the system has like a $76 million hole, and the point is, well, if it's only able to fill half of that, the other half needs to be eliminated effectively. And so this is everyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I said I totally agree with that. But why add the extra factor of the soil in there? What if you did something that was more simplistic so that it would be easier for people to understand, which is you just put the pods for sale, put those at the front of the line, 76 million pods, let's say, and then whatever percentage that you get from that, you take a haircut across the board. The stock, the previous pods, etc.
I mean, the short answer is it's the same structure. It is the exact same structure, with the exception of how quickly the minting goes to a third, and whether it'd just be 100% to the new pods. I would argue from a decentralization perspective, we really don't want 100% of the mints to go to one pod line, if that makes sense.
But I guess. So when I ask when I sort of think of an answer, I always ask a question. The question for me in this is to try to generate as much money as possible to try to reimburse the deficit. And in my opinion, instead of doing a third, if you sell these pods at the 76 mil right at the front of the line, you might get close to like 90% of that value back. And then your whole protocol is back to where it was, and everyone takes a 10% haircut, and we're done. And that's not a big deal. Or 20%, I don't care. I mean, 30%.
At a macro level, the real trade-off here is how much priority are you going to give, right? How much priority is the DAO willing to give to these lenders that are going to come in and bail out the protocol? And to some extent, that's up to the lenders. Now, we're trying to get a sense from the people that we're talking to whether a third is enough, whether there needs to be additional pod priority or not, or some mix of the two. And don't think that the verdict is in yet. But from our perspective, don't think that in the grand, because here's really the thing to evaluate at the margin. Like Beanstalk, it doesn't make sense to say 100% of the mints going forward are going to go to this new pod line until it's all paid off. Or even half are going to go to it and the rest go to stock. Think that that's too much, if that makes sense. You really got to have the system resume to some extent. And so then the real question is around that. How do you operate with that as the starting point? And I don't think it makes sense to, I think it would be a problem to overpay in that case, in the form of all of the minting going to one line or one group of people. Okay. That's where you get into trouble, right? Someone lends 20 million, and now they get in the front of the line and they get the first 30 million that are paid back. Like that's kind of a problem.
Right. No, I see what you're saying now, because no one else is going to put money into the system, or no one's going to be buying those beans because they're essentially, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. I stand corrected. I think that you guys have a better grasp of this, obviously, than I do, but I just wanted to make that suggestion so that it clarifies things, and I think not only for me, but for other people. You know what I'm saying? I see what you're saying now. Very good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate you, sir. We all come to a better understanding through these types of discussions. So this is great.
This is the epitome of why ANT exists in the first place, for these exact discussions. And to the, I think I said earlier in the night that we're used to, I think last Tuesday, before all of this mess happened, I think we were like 50 folks for ANT. And I remember us kind of, leaving the night saying, man, that was awesome. We rang the bell at 50. And what I'll say to the 178 individuals, and many of whom obviously weren't part of that 50 a week ago, as this protocol continues to move forward, as we implement these fixes and we keep rebuilding and then building further, this invite is open. This happens every Tuesday night at 7:30 Eastern. Me and however many Publiuses there are, we get up and we have these discussions, and I just sit and listen, which is fantastic. I have no problem with that. But I want to leave that invitation open. 3 months from now, hopefully, when this is something of a very painful memory, but a memory nonetheless, I hope that we are still looking at 179 folks on Tuesday nights at ANT having these discussions. Please come back, continue to join us. You're always welcome.
Yeah, and I want to just say that I am part of some other boardrooms and things like that in a different sector of whatever, but it's all about these sort of discussions where it's not about attacking a person. It's about discussing ideas. Even if you're wrong, it's always about sort of figuring out where the right place is to go. And with a community with lots of different ideas, the right direction forward will happen. But everyone needs to share their ideas, especially if they're a contrarian. You got to have that red hat on. You got to have the white hat on. You got to have all these different hats on so that people can understand all the different perspectives, even if you don't agree with those perspectives. And I think that brings things forward. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, man, tons of stuff in the chat. I'm trying like heck to keep up with the chat. So as I try to find my place again, I'll have Helon come back up. All right, bringing you up now, Helon. Go ahead.
Yo, I had a few more thoughts. Are there any people with big pockets who committed to putting funds into the fundraiser, or is it just hoping for the best?
Well, again, we've never once asked anyone to give us a commitment for anything. Beanstalk is the one that does the issuance, and everyone can just interact with the protocol. So nothing has changed there, and we have no sense of exactly how much people intend to put in, but people seem very excited. That's the long and the short of it. People have been reaching out to us, people we've never heard of or heard from, and yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool. There seems to be a lot of interest in Beanstalk that was either not there prior or has come out of the woodwork or what have you.
And so, depending on how the fundraiser goes, we would get so if it raises 10%, we would only keep 10% of our beans, versus if we just turn turned it back on, we would get all the beans, but valued at like 0 until it works its way back up.
Exactly. Though so you could just turn it back on, but beans are literally worth 0 cents right now. And there is something to be said for maybe the system could just issue enough credit and return to $1, or issue enough debt and return the price to $1. But we would think it makes sense to try to jumpstart the system in some capacity.
And what if because I think you're going to reset the weather with the fundraiser, but what if in the hypothetical,
it'll be separate, right? This will be like a one-time 3-day thing, but once the system is the weather will be back to what it is currently and functioning normally. So this is a one-time.
Would it make sense to just reset the weather completely? And
I would argue no. I would argue no, because the system is almost, no matter what, going to be in a worse position than it was before the attack. And so you'd expect the weather to have to go up. It may not, right? But at least in theory, you wouldn't want to like reset the weather lower for fear of moving it too low.
Okay. And then last 2 points. Are there any efforts to like hire a security expert who could look at like all possible future attack vectors or anything like that? Like to just be on the team?
Yes, but they're literally so hard to find. Like so hard to find. So in theory, it's like, well, what would you pay for those services? Well, up to $76 million, some might say. So highly valuable, but incredibly difficult to find the right people. Because again, the people that have this skill set, we know what they're spending their time doing. It's robbing all of us. So, it's very hard to get someone who wants to take a salary to just monitor things that they could otherwise steal millions of dollars for. So if you know someone, or anyone listening knows someone, or knows someone who might know someone, definitely send them to Beanstalk, because that's a position that I think we would all agree is money well spent collectively. So this is an open call for that, but no one has presented themselves thus far.
Would it be possible to pay Trail of Bits to do the audit faster, or is it pretty set?
So there's no real benefit to them moving it up, in the sense that, like, even if we moved them up 2 weeks, it's not going to at the margin make a substantive difference to things. And they basically made it clear to us they don't really have the room to move things up, unless it was like, unless it made a huge difference for us, and then they could try. And at the margin, we don't think it really makes a difference. We'd almost rather have the extra 2 weeks to make sure that everything is ready for the audit. Because again, just for reference, we were kind of working backwards collectively, all of us, to this January 2nd Trail of Bits audit start to get a bunch of code ready for them to review. And so that hasn't really changed. Obviously, what they're going to review has changed to some extent. But do think, moving things up with the Trail of Bits audit would not necessarily behoove anybody.
Okay. Well, those are all my thoughts. Thanks.
Elon, thank you. Yeah, and Elon, just to tag onto the back of that, I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations we've had over the last 2.5 days where the call has been, or the question has been, does anybody know anybody? Does anybody know any white hats that will be willing to come on to staff or whatever? I mean, that is something we are talking about all the time. So yeah, if anybody in this crowd knows a good, reliable resource that could move into a security role, we would love to talk to them. All right. Looking through the chat. So next question is from Mew Mew. Makes me laugh every time I say it. So question is, if someone rage quits from the silo early as it's vesting, what happens to the LP that they have abandoned?
It would get distributed to everybody else. So it'll be like everyone has this time locked or time vesting token, which represents some share of the remaining pool of assets under it that are restored. And as people quit or rage quit, whatever you want to call it, the obligations remaining to the relative to tokens is gonna decrease basically. Or maybe I should say the reverse. The liquidity relative to tokens is going to increase.
So I feel like what you're saying as well is, if you're willing, it definitely makes sense to stick around. All right. Next, so I think next we'll have we'll bring Amertech up to the stage. Okay, I'm inviting you now, Amertech. Go ahead.
Thanks a lot, folks. First of all, thanks everybody. I think this has been a pure example of pulling up your socks, rolling up your sleeves, and saying, you know what, shit happens, but we are here. So thanks for that. Yeah. I have a suggestion, and I apologize if this has been discussed, right? So this is more of brainstorming, talking about haircut, right? How about if haircut is not a function of how much funds are raised, but rather a function of vesting slowly over a period of time? Let me give an example to say what I mean, right? So I don't want to have a fixed duration, let's say 100 days of vesting, because the whole idea of Beanstalk was it's never bounded by a certain fixed time. It depends on how the system works, and over time it plays out that way, right? So I'll explain it through example. Let's say we raise 7.6 million instead of 76 million, right? Now everybody gets a token, let's say old bean, which is 10% of what the actual value was, right? Now they have two options. Either they can sell it for 10% of the value, which it holds currently. That way, 90% of liability is written off the system. That's also how you get rid of it. Second option is that they hold it over time, and 10% of all pod sales or 10% of silo or whatever is generated goes towards liquidity of this bean old token. So over time, till the time somebody is made whole or till it reaches 76 million, people hold. So that will avoid the dump, which can create deep pressure or whatever.
So can you just clarify where the money is coming from to continuously add value to this old bean?
Yeah, so first part was, of course, fundraising. 50% of it goes there, and 50% of it goes to the liquidity of protocol to get it started. Yeah. The B part was basically.
Wait, I don't understand. So the fundraiser raises $7.6 million, and you're saying then everyone gets 10% of the old bean compared to what they had before, and then what?
So what I basically meant is, let's say, and this is all assumption that we'll have a new protocol, right? A completely new slate. So let's say we raise 20%, 18 point.
You're saying this is a new protocol. I understand. So ultimately, I think that the main point is that the goal of doing this fundraise is not to have a new protocol. And in practice, if we're going to preserve collectively everyone's pods and stock and BDV as best as possible, I think the goal should be to do that as forward as possible, not like restart Beanstalk, but have there be some lingering obligations. It's either Beanstalk should be restarted from scratch and everyone that lost money, it's like we're all accepting our losses and moving on to the new Beanstalk, or it makes sense to figure out, okay, well, there's all these old liabilities. How can we all collectively get this thing back up off the ground in a way that's fair to everyone, as fair as possible? But don't think it makes sense to take like a middle path where we're now starting over, but having these liabilities, but taking on fundraiser money. It's like we got to pick and choose, I think.
Correct. I agree. The idea here was that we are anyways writing a new smart contract, right? Not writing, I mean using a new smart contract.
No,
anyways.
the thought is that Beanstalk, the old Beanstalk contract is going to continue to be used, but a new Bean token is going to have to be issued.
Correct. So let me combine these two. And I think we are both speaking on same lines that I agree in principle, whatever you're saying. The main idea was basically the haircut being a function of people holding on to the Bean tokens as long as it needs. It can be 100 days or 1 year or 2 years. And whoever quits earlier, they let go of their liabilities. And that's how the liability basically diminishes from the system.
Well, I think that's part of the idea already, right? Is that not covered by the time vesting for the stockholders?
Not exactly, because time vesting is just fixed day right now. It's fixed to 100 days, right?
No. The point is, if you redeem on the first day, you forfeit the rest. You don't get 1% a day no matter what. If you redeem on the first day, we think you should forfeit the other 99%.
Yeah, but the thing is here, the haircut is not a function of that solely, right? Haircut is
haircut is a function of the money that's raised, and then you have this second haircut.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying here. The haircut is function of both the things, right? So whereas instead of that, we can make haircut function of just the time vesting, and this is not bounded by time period. So it is bounded by
Got it. I understand what you're saying. So you're saying,
so anyways,
scale down the liabilities.
Correct. And if anybody rage quits, then they get a haircut, and that's a function of that rather than how much we raise. So even if we raise 7 million, because 76 million is a bit of a far cry. I mean, anything can happen, but markets are down. I don't know how it plays out. So instead of people getting 90% haircut right off the bat, they are told, okay, your token value is 10%. If you quit now, eventually you let go of 90% liability, and that is written off from the system. So if you don't quit now.
I hear you 100%. I think this goes to what we were saying earlier, that if you just think about it from the perspective of the individual investors, the first people to participate, if they have the expectation that no one is going to come in behind them and no one's getting a haircut, why would anyone take the first step, if that makes sense? So it does. The elegance of introducing the haircut is that the first person is inclined to make the move, and the second person and the third person, and at some point you may get all the way filled up or 50% filled up, but the real question that needs to be solved is how do you start getting it filled up? Because this does become a lot more risk off at $7.6 million, and that's a made up number, but the idea is even 10%, everyone should start to feel pretty good. There's a path forward. So the question is, how do you make it really attractive for the first 10 million and the next 10 million and the next 10 million and the next 10 million?
I get it. I think basically that was the point what I was also saying, that eventually in this system, which I just said, right, haircut is implied on the discount already, right? So that means if we raise 7.6 million, the token value is automatically 10%. It's not more than that. So for an investor, they're not paying more than what they have to. Second point was also related to, I know a lot of people, and they have been saying, even if I can get my 10-20%, I'm happy to just, get that liquidity and put it in a silo, because early liquidity contributor to silo gain a lot of money eventually over a period of time, right? So there will be different mechanics, different permutation combination that can play out as long as haircut becomes a function of over time rather than what we raise. I mean, that's what I wanted to say. There's no perfect holy grail to this, but we are all just brainstorming here, right? So I'll stop here, but thanks for listening to my recommendation. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. So much fun.
Likewise.
I have a feeling you and I could do this all day.
Yes, absolutely. And there's a different aspect to it, which I'll discuss with you offline, but after we are over this hurdle of 1-2 months of getting this on the track. That was the corporate side, which I was talking on 1 or 2 days ago. But that is after we get this done. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Sir.
Really, it's just awesome to have so many thoughtful people in the community.
Likewise. I appreciate your time and I appreciate your never give up attitude. Yeah.
Thank you, Amertech. All right. And so Dumpling dropped me a DM that said Beethoven could be ready with a song at 9:30 or whenever we finish. I'm looking at this list of questions. We might be here for a little while, so I hope Beethoven brewed a pot of coffee. Let's see. So, man, okay. So I am flipping down through. Actually, quite a bit of this is in the classroom chat is actually really good discussion as opposed to specific questions. Okay, so while I'm trying to flip through and find the next actual question in the chat, which there's some fantastic conversation happening in the chat, I'm going to have AJ come back up because he is in line. And then BMAC, I see you behind AJ. We'll get you shortly as well. Okay, AJ, you're on your way up. AJ, you're going to have to accept that invite. All right, so there's AJ. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just lagged out. I'm sorry, I won't waste your time. I just wanted to follow up on what Amertek said, because I think he explained what I was trying to say better than me. And I'll say that I hadn't considered how the haircut would incentivize the first buyers of the new pod line, so I'm totally ignorant in that. But I just want to say that trying to restore all the liquidity pools from all $76 million from pods is super, super, super expensive for the Beanstalk, right? Because that's just going to be a lot of money that Beanstalk owes. And so, if there was a way to just take as much as needed to get the flywheel started and continue and give the option over time to restore the stolen money through minting, some portion of the minting, and this is not, I do not want to disincentivize people from getting into the new pod line, obviously. But that would be restoring the stolen money from minting would be a lot cheaper than selling pods. Pods are expensive for stock.
I would disagree fundamentally with that. I think selling pods is by far the best way for Beanstalk to attract capital. Ultimately, the ability to attract liquidity via the debt mechanism is a much better way for Beanstalk to recoup funds than anything having to do with the minting, because the minting is a tax going forward, whereas anything where it's issuing debt is a one-time issuance where there's you know exactly what the cost is to the system up front and over what time it's going to get paid. Now, in theory, you have something similar where you say there's this liability of $60 million that needs to get paid, and at some point then the minting will stop going towards that. But I would argue that the difference is, in one case, you have the system up front locking itself in and saying going forward there's a path forward, whereas otherwise now there's this continuous thing overhanging over the system.
If having pods that are owed, isn't that also a continuous thing that's at least hanging over the lenders? And you definitely need to raise a significant amount of money from that pod sale, because that is the best way to attract capital. But as long as you knew that you were not going to give any minting bonus after you had fully restored the debt, then it's not really. Is that would you still consider that to be a continuous tax going forward? If you knew we restored $40 million of the pool with the pod sale, and then we're going to do the next $36 million with minting, and then after that everything is back to normal. Is that not is that still does that still would you still qualify that the same way?
But here's the thing: what does it mean to restore via minting? That, because the assets are not Bean assets; they're non-Bean assets. So in reality, what is it? A season of plenty where now your Beanstalk is selling it, So it's just brutal.
All right. Well, that is exactly what I was thinking of. Is you would sell the some portion of the newly minted beans directly for F. and then or whatever asset you needed in order to.
Yeah, that's why it's like that. Then it literally becomes an explicit tax on the growth of the system. Whereas having people, as we've seen in practice, a lot of people harvest their pods and put them right into the silo.
Interesting. Okay, thank you so much for for listening to my follow up.
AJ, you're always welcome up on stage. We appreciate the conversation. Okay, so looking down through the chat, if I miss anybody, it's purely by accident. Usually when we're in class, someone will drop me a line in the chat saying you missed me, and I will apologize and we'll make up for it. The next question that I see is from Bean, and I'm down at 7:51 p.m. today. So Bean's question at that point in the chat was, what will our stock be tied to in terms of withdrawing and losing stock?
I don't really understand. Oh, so maybe it's what would you withdraw to have to lose your stock?
Yeah, I think that's how I'm reading that too.
Got it. Maybe Bean, do you want to come up and clarify if that's what you mean?
Yeah, how about Bean, you want to
there just to clarify.
Raise your hand and we will pull you up on stage. I'm going to check to see if they're in the crowd. So I don't think I saw.
Yeah, I think I see.
There's Bean. There's Bean. All right. Yep. Invite sent. Come on up.
Maybe we'll give them a minute to figure out how to get up here, and then they can ask their questions.
That sounds great. All right. In the meantime, I'm going to pull BMac up. Come on up, BMac. Go ahead. BMac, you're muted, but you can go ahead whenever you're ready. BMac still muted.
Hold on, it says their server muted on this end. How do we undo that?
I'm trying. I don't see a server mute. Dumpling or Silo Chad. Maybe I'm missing where I could lift that. But when I right click, I don't see them as muted. Or just muted and then unmuted BMac. There we go, BMac. Go ahead, you're good.
Awesome. So just a quick question about the rage quit option. You had mentioned before that, as people leave, that other people will benefit from the LP that they're abandoning. So I just wanted to understand the specifics of that. So is it basically that there will be a true up to the haircut at the end of the vesting period? Or was the point more along the lines of everyone participating in Beanstalk is going to benefit because there's less debt owed? Or is it just specifically for those that were impacted by the haircut?
I actually lost you there with your two secondary questions. I thought I knew what you were asking, but then you confused me there. Can you just clarify who you're referring to?
So folks that are going to get access to, let's say it's, 10% of their original deposits, right? So they'll take that haircut, at which point maybe they withdraw on day one and lose 90% of the already haircutted
99%. Amount. Yes.
So is there going to be a true up to people that were impacted by the haircut based off of that amount? Or are you saying that it's just benefiting everyone?
Well, when you say, I don't know what you mean by a true up. That sounds like a CPA term. But in short, let's say there's a pool. Let's keep it super simple. The total BDV liquidity that's restored is $1,000, and there are 100 people that each own 1% of it. If on day 10, someone withdraws 100% of what they were gonna withdraw, so they would have been entitled to 1 had they waited the whole time. Well, I guess we said it was 1,000 across 100 people, so they would have been entitled to 10, but they're only getting 10%, so they took out 1. So now there's 99 people left and 999 of value left in the pool, if that makes sense. So the amount of value that is left for everyone else to claim has gone up.
Got it. So essentially, if you are someone who's been impacted by the exploit and the haircut, then it's going to be dynamic. There will be a starting point based off of how much liquidity is raised, but then over time, based off of how many people exit early, the haircut could be reduced.
Yes, exactly right.
All right, perfect. That's all I had.
Thanks, BMAC. Definitely appreciate it. All right. All right, let's try to give, so Bean, you've got an invite. I'm going to try to invite you myself. Oh, I might have accidentally invited Nasdaq. Nasdaq, I'm going to kick you from the stage, but I'll bring you back, bud.
Ouch.
Sorry. Boom, gone. Okay, I'm going to... Sorry, Nasdaq. All right, I'm going to try...
Tough love.
Serious. Nasdaq's good for you.
Beloved community member, no love. No love for that.
Oh, man. All right, we're going to try to get Bean up here. I'm going to dismiss Bean. I'm going to dismiss your request to speak. Just resubmit the request as soon as I dismiss it. So put your hand back up, and we'll get you up here. We'll try to get you back up. So Bean, if you want to do that. And actually, in the meantime, since I'm seeing some hesitation from Bean, I am going to bring Nasdaq up. All right, go ahead, Nasdaq. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so one question I had was that there was one comment about not resetting the weather. I don't know what it's at now, 5,300% or whatever. So my question is, like, if the current pod line, gets close to, or let's just say it, ends up equaling the new pod line ends up equaling the current pod line, even if the weather would have to go above the 5,300% for people to go into that, I guess. I don't know. Sorry, I didn't formulate this well. I was talking with Bean Merchant. I thought there was kind of like an edge case there.
An edge case where what happens? I'm not sure I follow. Sorry, Nasdaq.
I guess, like, if the weather was lower than the current weather for the fundraiser, then people would just wait. Either so, like, there was
until after, so that then
yeah. Then
so this is the whole reason to have the system scale, right? This is why it's important to have the system scale down based on the liquidity that it's able to attract, such that the expectation is not that there's extended periods of time trading millions of dollars below peg. Because then if you're millions of beans below peg, there was no scaling down. You have all this exit liquidity, very little new liquidity to support it, millions of dollars below peg at 5,800% weather. That's a really negative situation that you want to avoid at all costs, right? So the goal in writing into the policy that there's going to be this scaling down is to make it clear that anyone waiting for 10 million soil at 5,800% is in la la land.
Okay. Sorry, my brain just went completely blank. Sorry.
Mine too, sir. We're all struggling here.
But I guess as it raises more money and then it comes closer to the 76 million, then the scale gets reduced, or like the scale back is less. Does this make sense? So it almost becomes like game theory. Sorry, I don't have this formula. I don't have this question formulated well enough. I'm sorry. I have my other thoughts well formulated, but not this thought.
I have a feeling we'll be up here for a little while longer, NASJack. Yeah. So if you reformulate that thought, feel free to come back up.
Please do. All right. Still trying to get Beaned up here. Bean, you've got an invite. You should be good to come up and speak. Bean, how about if you want, how about you just type your question into the classroom chat and tag me, at me with your question, and we will do it that way so that you can get your question asked. In the meantime, so I will I'll bring up Zachary Dash. All right, Zachary, you should be on stage. Go ahead.
Testing. You guys can hear me?
We can hear you himself.
What's up, guys?
What's up?
Hey, thanks for having me. I left a message in the main chat, I think a day or two ago, but I kind of wanted to come on stage mainly because I think I have a different perspective of most of the people listening to this, simply because I'm super new to the project. So I had a few great conversations with a few of your community members and team members, whatever the word you want to use for that, right? A few weeks ago in regards to working along to try to get Bean involved with Block Zero in some type of way. And I really dove into the project, really fell in love with what you guys are doing. I was fortunate not to lose any money. And so I've just been, I know lots of people were negatively impacted. And so I working as a protocol creator myself, who's also experienced an exploit situation at a much smaller scale. It's always heart goes out to going through this. It's just unexplainable. And I also just wanted to appraise you guys for coming out publicly, I think in a time that you guys obviously didn't have to do that. So first and foremost, I just want to jump on stage to say I think you guys are dealing with this in a great manner. I think from the other angle that I wanted to come out here is I'm at the point now where like I was already intrigued with the protocol before this was happening. Now just seeing how you guys are dealing with it, even more intrigued. And it's pretty funny listening in. Everybody has kind of this lingo that you guys are very familiar with, the pods and the stalks and the beans. Like you guys, it's like a second language. And have
you heard the songs yet, sir?
Yeah. So I'm still trying to learn the lingo and catch up to speed. But long story short, I want to help. I want to support. I would like to put some type of capital in. I'm by no means some big, massive whale or anything. And I think my only thing that's keeping me back is when I see the proposals, it uses a bunch of context that I should probably figure out and go through and take the time to research. But I think a lot of investors that want to jump in, they're just going to be like, all right, what are the terms? How do I get in? Like, what's going on, without like fully knowing all the ins and outs. I was wondering if there's any way like from a high level, and by the way, I've only been in this chat for 10 minutes. I haven't been listening to the previous however hours you guys have been in here. At a high level, for people like myself that maybe haven't been involved with the project before, but they want to support either through capital or through marketing or whatever it is, what are the best ways that we can help?
So, the education is something that we've all kind of collectively worked together to teach one another all the lingo and terms, and there is work being done to create like a better educational curriculum. And I think in these times, lots of new eyes and ears on Beanstalk. It's unclear what the best way to kind of get quickly up to speed is. But there's lots of resources out there, and chatting in the Discord and asking for help, I think lots of people will direct you to resources.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say my confusion has nothing to do with your documentation, but my time limits. So I just want to mention, I think you guys have done I think the terminology you guys have used has been hugely net positive for the project. So just wanted to mention, I don't think it's on your end, but my end.
Fair enough. Well, I think there are some guides. Austin put one out recently that does a pretty good job of breaking things down from the basics. To answer your second question about like what there is to do to help, Beanstalk really is community run and organized, and would just say, you're welcome with open arms to come join us, and B, as the fundraise comes into shape and what that's actually going to look like comes into form, just getting the word out there as much as humanly possible will be great.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to supporting. I think, as Blockseer is a DAO, I should have known that answer was coming. People like, I want to help. It's like, all right, jump in, get your hands dirty, figure it out. I think just from a capital perspective, I'm really interested to see when everything is formalized, what that looks like. And I think the more straightforward it can be, maybe have like a Beanstalk lingo one, and then like a non-Beanstalk, like here, you're an angel, here's what it looks like, here are the terms, I think would be hugely helpful. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I think, again, it's such a crappy situation to go through, but there's been so many different people that have said it differently, but if and when you guys can make it through this, it's just going to be like hell of a story. So I'm excited for you guys.
Thank you, Zachary. Definitely appreciate it. I am trying to get realigned. I feel like every time my phone does anything, I get zoomed to the bottom of the chat, Classroom chat and Discord. I have to find my space again. So while I'm trying to do that, let's bring... Actually, so I will remind Bean, your invite is still out there to come up and speak. So any Discord specialists out there, so actually, hey mods, Bean's name, their name is showing up in red. I don't know if that means they've got some type of server mute on or something along those lines, but I would appreciate any help we could give to Bean in that regard. So Dumpling, Aliceros, anyone that can give a hand in terms of helping Bean out, I'd appreciate that. So in the meantime, while the mods are trying to figure that out, I'm going to invite Bassfee up. Or Assfee. Either way. Go ahead, sir.
Hello guys. Good evening. Two questions. One is, any thoughts on making the amount of funds raised a function of the revenue share? So, for example, if only 10% of funds are raised, then let's say 90% revenue share goes to the new money. Or, if 50% funds are raised, then 50% goes to new money. One, that, and two, like any thoughts put into special incentives for old money that was in pods and be a silo that wants to put in new money, which is a bit above and beyond just fresh money. So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So have not previously considered the raise percent determining the payout percent. The only problem with that is that, we do want to make it as attractive as possible for the people that are contributing. And that may be the place where if the payout percent is not determined, it's very hard for them to price their return. And being able to price your return is very important to making like an effective financial decision in theory. So, want to make Beanstalk able to put people in a position to make confident decisions. So that would be our main concern there. With regards to some sort of like treatment for old silo money that wants to also put in new money, don't really think it makes sense to have any sort of special treatment. The old silo money might be the single most incentivized set of people to put more money in. So don't feel like it makes sense to give them any sort of additional incentive.
Well, okay, I agree with you on the first one. The second one will give you a bit of a pushback, right? Like, the best outcome, at least this is how I've read it, the best outcome for new money is that if there's the least amount of capital raised. If I'm new money, I would want there to be as little capital raised as possible. That's how I've seen it. Is that how you see it or not really?
Well, it depends, right? I think that the thing is that it has to be comfortable for the new money that's coming in early on, that if there's no additional money raised, the system is okay. But I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that the people that participate early would prefer for the system to not issue any additional debt beyond that, because ultimately that means that the system is going to be significantly smaller. So they may own a larger chunk of a smaller system, which may be in theory better for them, but in the classic Beanstalk ethos, like everyone in theory benefits as the system grows, but benefits slightly less as a percentage of the total potential benefit. So don't really see that as a problem, but definitely understand what you're getting at there, Asfi.
Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
So Publius, Bean is still in the queue. I've got Elastic Bean behind them. I know that we have talked about getting on essentially either every evening or almost every evening. Does it make sense? We've been going for 2.5 hours. Does it make sense to have another, 7:30 p.m. start time tomorrow where we can pick up on the list of questions? Do you want to keep going? I mean, I'm just sitting here, kind of navigating. I want to put that question to you about how you want to handle tonight.
So we're pretty open. I mean, we could keep doing this for as long as people have questions. Might want to. So just for reference, for tomorrow, I think, and maybe Mod can correct me if I'm wrong.
Twitter Spaces.
There's going to be a Twitter Spaces at 9 p.m. Eastern with Mark Jeffrey. And so that may be the forum that, tomorrow's questions take place, if that makes sense, in. But wouldn't want to discourage people from asking questions tomorrow or asking questions tonight. So we'd just say, if people want to ask your questions, like, keep them coming. And if people would prefer to wait till tomorrow or the next day, as you were saying, Rex, we have a feeling we're going to be doing a session like this every night or close to it. And so
the reason I bring it up at all is I'm looking at the number of questions that are still in the chat, and we could be here for a while. And like I said, I'm just navigating. So I'm good to go. I can go till as long as we need to go. But you're the one or ones that are thinking, talking, etc. I want to give you that ability to make that choice.
Let's keep it going. There's no reason not to.
All right. Sounds good. So with that, I'm going to bring up Elastic Bean. All right, you're good to go, Elastic Bean. Go ahead. Elastic, you are unmuted, but I can't hear you. Same deal. I saw your mute toggle. See it is now off, but just not hearing anything. Still not hearing it.
Also, just had a thought, Rex. Do you think it makes sense for us to launch like a classroom questions channel separate from classroom chat so that like you don't have this crazy time trying to find all these questions?
Yeah, and I guess I go back and forth on it because I do feel like, yeah, that may be a way to do it. Because to your point, it seems like what happens, and this happens in regular A&Ts as well, is that you get some questions rolling, and then you get, so Publius, you're answering questions. The questions are also being answered in the chat, and eventually that's when the conversations start to snowball a little bit. Elastic Bean, I'm still not hearing you for what it's worth. You may want to, so I'm going to put you back in the audience. You can definitely, we can redo the invite. We can try to get this squared away though. All right. Excuse me. So looking through the chat, yeah, we are. So Divine Jesus asked if there was anything official about the fundraiser yet, and I know that that's been pretty well covered. Anything you'd want to add, Publius?
No, I think we've covered it pretty extensively.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. Publius, did you just ask a question in the chat?
No, so we're just scrolling through the chat trying to find stuff and DM'd you a question we found.
Thank you. Perfect. Yeah. How about that's perfect. And we don't have the asker's reference, but yeah, I think that's a great question to ask. So the question is, did the team receive? Did the team receive help from other founders, protocols, or builders?
So, and I found it again. It's in. This is from Andre Eden at 8:08. So we're only 2 hours behind here on the question.
Yeah.
Short answer is not really. Like, particularly prior to launch, this was really an underground operation, if you will.
All right, and I see the Black Knight back in the queue. How about we'll invite him back up?
Thanks,
Go ahead,
guys.
Black Knight.
It's just going to be a quick question. It's just in regards to marketing. I know that you guys have done an amazing job of kind of evolving organically, but I'm just curious to know if there's much thought, well, there would be thought about how you're going to market this upcoming kind of sale, launch, whatever you want to call it, in regards to, how big's that reach going to be, how much adoption, how much momentum are you looking to kind of build, and how much reach are you looking to kind of, I mean, obviously the maximum reach is the most practical, but to build that adoption and there needs to be some runway, right? So curious to know if there was any thoughts on how big that runway will be to kind of build the adoption as much as possible.
Well, I think there's two questions. One is how to get the word out there as much as possible about the fundraiser, and then B, once the fundraiser takes place, how to continue to get the word out there about Beanstalk. The silver lining in what's happened is the Q score for Beanstalk has gone up dramatically over the past couple days. So with regards to the second and even the former point, think think that whole job of getting the word out there has been made a lot simpler. Like we're there's like the Wall Street Journal's reaching out to us. Like that's crazy stuff. So in short, think that getting the word out there will not be that difficult, and a wide variety of the Bean community is already kind of working very hard to educate people about what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, yeah, due to the latest events, you've definitely got the visibility out there. It's just a matter of kind of, you guys haven't, correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't been focused on marketing. You have, you're doing a rebrand, etc. of the website, which is fantastic, but it's kind of a different, these are kind of unplanned events. So I'm just curious to see how much effort's going to be thrown into that. But I'm not expecting to answer that now. It's just exciting to understand how much reach there will be as part of this event. So I'm not really asking a question. It was just more of I'm just making a statement more than anything. So, we'll just let the story unfold. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Black Knight. Thanks for coming up again. I would say that I think some of the early conversations, especially as these events unfolded late Sunday into early Monday, was the team in general said, okay, a lot of eyes on us. What are we going to do to try to show really the world that we can bounce back from this? And I don't think there's anybody. In fact, I'm certain that there's nobody at least in the core contributor team that likes the idea that this was a circumstance under which we got this attention. But I think everybody understands that this is probably our best opportunity to try to really show the quality of this project. So trying to figure out how to navigate that well.
Yeah, and just to quickly add, I mean, it'd be great to kind of think that there's some potentially professional services out there that could be leveraged, or they offer their time due to the circumstances that we're all in, to kind of really partnership with someone to really promote the the token, the relaunch kind of thing, not just from a marketing perspective, not from a getting in bed with another project kind of thing.
And Publius, I'm sure you'll have additional thought or two, but I don't want to understate the efforts of our marketing team. We've got a couple marketing specialists that are part of the core team. We also work with a couple specific marketing groups that have provided a lot of service to us, and those are things that are constantly underway as well. And now all of a sudden we found ourselves kind of thrust onto a lot larger stage.
Yeah, and I totally respect that. And as well, is always that double-edged sword on these conversations is, you don't want to attract the wrong kind of people as well. So it's always a fine line. You want to build out organically, and you don't want to attract, in quotes, the pump and dumpers and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely a special art trying to reach out to the right people as well. So totally respect that.
Completely agreed.
I can chime in a bit.
Speaking of marketing, here's Mod, one of our marketing gurus.
Thank you, Rex. I was going to say the way that Beanstalk Farms is approaching this is through education. So we believe in explaining, what is the value proposition of, first of all, what is this, barn raising going to be like, and then, what's Beanstalk in general as a protocol. So we'll focus on the educating, every participant, what, every action means, and then we'll let everyone choose, for themselves.
Thanks, Mod. And thank you, Black Knight.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Next question. Looks like I've found it in the chat. So Andre Eden asks, and I think this has already been pretty well covered, but I'll ask for the purpose of seeing if there's anything you have to add, Publius. Question: are we going to limit the weather offered to the investors during the fundraising?
In short, because there will be some limited time and a fixed time period over which the weather increases, implicitly you will have a maximum weather.
All right. So Andre has another question. But I would say that it's already probably been answered pretty well. It was the question about putting investor pods at the front of the line. But I think we've already talked through that pretty well. So, I guess I'll just ask anything to add in that regard, Publius.
Not at the moment.
All right. Okay, so Elastic Bean just DM'd me and said that he thinks his mic is squared away. So I'm going to bring Elastic Bean back up. All right. You're
Hello?
on stage. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Finally, thank you. Sorry for that. Publius, can you please clarify what happens if you decide to cash out on the first vesting schedule? So like 1%. What happens to the 99%?
The rest of the time vested tokens will increase their claim, basically. So this was an example we went through a little bit before, but in short, you would be forfeiting your claim to those assets, and everyone else with a claim to time vested assets, their claim would increase.
Okay. All right. Is there any benefit, just out of curiosity, to burning the 99 instead of?
Definitely not. Like, that would be the money that Beanstalk just raised. You wouldn't want to burn it.
Yeah. And then why the 3-day fundraiser?
So 3 days, it's a little bit made up in the sense that, should it be a day? Should it be 30 days? Who knows? This is kind of, it's based on a couple different factors. One is trying to get everyone to focus on it for a period of time, and it's hard to get people to focus on things for a week or 2 weeks. Whereas a day felt like it would be too short, or like 24 hours is too short. And certainly 12 hours would be too short. So this is a sweet spot, a little bit of art more than science.
Okay. And so lastly, I agree with Zachary when he came on stage. He said that I think Beanstalk should put an effort into making it like dead simple, because like you're saying, if you're doing it in a very restricted time frame, like 3 days, people don't necessarily have time, like newcomers, to study everything about the protocol and the jargon around it, and that might affray some people. So just I think it's something to keep in mind. But thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I had to step away for just 1 second. Elastic Bean, anything else we can do for you?
No, thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Next, I'm going to bring up Benji. All right, Benji, inviting you up now. You are on stage. Go ahead.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So as far as I understand, right now the plan is to haircut both the silo and the pod line on the same rate. So we're talking if, for example, we need to give a haircut for the silo 50%, that means that somebody that owns, let's say, 100 pods will get a haircut and now he owns 50 pods. Is that correct?
It's a little hard to hear you, Benji. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry, I will try again. I'm saying, as far as I understand right now, the plan is to give a haircut to the silo and to the pod holders at the same rate. So, for example, if we need to haircut the silo by 50%, then somebody that holds 100 pods will get a haircut of 50 pods, and now he owns only 50 pods. The thing about that, is that correct so far?
That's correct.
Okay, so the thing I see about this is, and I'm wondering, some people have had the opportunity to get 70 pods for just one bean, right? So effectively, these people will get a haircut of 50%, but what you're doing, you're basically reducing their profit from 70x to 35x. So it's a little bit different than people that are not only recovering not even recovering their capital in the silo. And I understand that there is a concept of pod rate, and it's not straightforward because that money is not in their pocket like the people in the silo. But at the same time, if you treat the pod line on a cost basis instead of one pod equals one bean, then we might be in a situation that the pod line is reduced from 680 million pods.
I hear what you're saying, but I would just say Beanstalk fundamentally, if it starts treating pods based on, your cost basis when lending to Beanstalk, that really is the protocol telling you to kind of go fuck yourself, doesn't matter what we promised you, you're just getting your basis back. And I think that if Beanstalk were to make that statement to investors, that would be a much worse statement to make than everyone's getting this one-time haircut because of the hack, as opposed to all of the money that you were, Beanstalk told you would receive at some point. All of it is getting taken away because of this hack, and the best you can get is your money back or something like that. That seems kind of antithetical to the model that Beanstalk espouses.
Well, it depends, because if, for example, we short the pod line to, let's say 100 mil, you have a better chance to see anything from your money rather than nothing if you place, let's say, 200 or 300 in the line.
Yeah,
right?
but why cut it arbitrarily? Why cut it arbitrarily? Why not cut it pro rata based on whatever Beanstalk is able to raise?
Well, I think there are two things to consider. One is the funds are stolen, right? So we're trying to get even with, we're trying to recover to all of the people that they've been.
Respectfully, I would actually push back a lot here, because the funds were stolen from stockholders, right? From silo members. The pod holders, nothing was stolen from them. They still have this obligation owed by Beanstalk. Now, you may say practically, unless Beanstalk is able to attract liquidity, Beanstalk's dead, and therefore the pods are worthless, But in practice, the pod holders, they still have their pods. The fact that the pod holders are going to get a haircut, they don't even get a vote in the snapshot because they don't own any stock. So it's like the idea that now the stockholders that were just stolen from are going to vote to basically tell all of the previous lenders to Beanstalk to go take a hike. Well, at some point, you might as well just say, let's just start from scratch, Seriously, it's like you might as well just start from scratch.
Okay, understood. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Benji. So, looking at the chat, next question I see is from Hashrash, who asks, any talks about giving additional stock reward for everyone that was affected?
No. The thought is to take a stock haircut, not a reward. Everyone's broke right now. There's no rewards. Like, how could Beanstalk give out rewards right now?
All right. Next, Sleepy Bean asks, for the new investors in the pod line, what are the incentives for them to put money into the pod line?
Pretty much the same as normal. You're lending money to Beanstalk, and there's the expectation of future bean mints.
And I would say that this is a unique opportunity for those new investors in that new pod line to get a chance to be at the front of the pod line in this parallel line. All right. Skimming down through. Okay, so I'm actually going to hop into our chat because you dropped a couple questions. So next, Valbean asks, what was the amount of dollars of trading post-exploit? It must be a very small amount since there are only 20K was only 20K in the curve pool and even less in the Uniswap.
Don't actually know the dollar value, but on chain it looks like there was like more than half of the beans were bought and sold after the hack. So a huge amount of bean value, but not sure about US dollar value because the beans were basically worthless at the time.
All right. Next, from the screenshots you dropped in our chat. So, Andre Eden, see. So Andre offers a couple options for shades of proposal. So equilibrated financing, which is the same as discussed thus far, that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 distribution of it would be future bean mints. And then the other shade that they mention is investor-oriented refinancing. So essentially refinance silo funds vested until specific market cap, plus the investors get pods in first in the line position.
Where can I see this? I'm not sure I'm following.
If you hop into, so Publius dropped this into our chat. So to Publius and myself.
Oh, I see. This is the first question or the second question?
This is the second one from Andre Eden.
So can the team offer two shades of proposals? In short, our hope is that the DAO will be able to consider a couple different proposals. This is one where there's a crowdsource funding, but in theory, over the next couple days, there may be capital that presents itself and wants to cut a deal or something like that with the DAO as well. So, and would have specific terms that they'd request, a la what Andre is suggesting. So that's very much up in the air. And if there's offers that we become aware of, we'll certainly make sure that they get presented to the DAO accordingly.
Okay. All right. Next in the chat, Warthog asks, is Publius receptive to the idea that vesting a percentage for silos should be done based on market cap, not on time? The 100 days that was presented. It would be better for new investors to be able to determine their returns on their new investment.
Well, I think we kind of already covered it when we were talking with what's his name? I forget his name. The guy, the new guy, Amira something. But I think we pretty much covered this.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Amar Tech, that's right.
Yep, Amar Tech. Yep, agreed. All right, let me jump back into our chat. Looks like we do have Asegis is in the queue. Asegis, I'm going to pull you back up on the stage.
Hello?
Hello, you're good to go.
All right. Let me just change my audio to speaker. And okay. I'd like to just sort of get in the weeds a little bit. When you guys go to auction off these pods, what sort of strategy are you guys hypothesizing will be the route that you're looking to go? Or, I mean, what are the different options when you auction them off? I know you guys were saying the FIFO stuff, but like the first person who bids on it shouldn't get the first.
Well, it's not a bid. It's not a bid, right? This is going to be sowing. It'll be the traditional Beanstalk model.
Okay, so how would the interface look? Let's say if I go on there. I
have no idea what the interface will look like, frankly. That's being designed by the...
Oh, okay, okay. I mean, I guess I don't know. Like, what I'm saying
Have
is...
you ever sown beans, sir? Have you ever sown beans?
I have not. I only bought and got in, and
it'll basically be like I guess now the website's not working, but if you previously the field module where there was soil available and a weather, and then you could go up to the available soil, that will in theory be a similar user flow where Beanstalk is willing to issue up to 76 million soil, and you can lend up to whatever the available soil is.
Can you explain it a different way? I'm a new user, right? So how am I, like one of the other gentlemen said, how are people going to want to do this if they don't understand it? Is there another more simplistic way to set it up so that people can be like, hey, if I bid the most, I get the front of the line. If I bid the least, I get
so there's not actually bidding. The way this works is you actually get in line. You're totally right, though, that we need to make this as clear as humanly possible to people. But in the case of Beanstalk, there's no bidding process. Beanstalk at any time is willing to lend to you or not, basically. And in short, if there is soil, anyone can go and lend to Beanstalk. And so, let's say the fundraise happens in USDC. If there is soil, you will be able to go and take your USDC and lend to Beanstalk.
Okay, so let me just, now that I sort of understand this more, I think that one of the faults of this in this sort of capital raising portion of this endeavor will be this. So let's say at the time that this auction or this thing starts, the soiling or whatever you want to call it, starts at 7 a.m. The first 10 million people, I'm going to be at the first of the line. But as soon as the 10 mil gets soiled or however you want to call it, I'm not going to be as happy. I'm not going to be okay, I'm going to be much more reluctant to put in $1 to try to get $1 worth of soil, let's say, right?
Well, not necessarily, because A, the weather will continue to go up over time, and B, the risk profile of lending to Beanstalk changes dramatically as more money comes in.
Well, I'm just asking you to reconsider a different way so that this 76 million, whatever you want to call it, soil gets redistributed. Because I think that it would be tough for you're not going to get a whole lot of money capital flowing in if let's say I'm the 75th million dollar that's going in USDC. I'm not going to put that in knowing that I'm at the back of the line of the front of the line. You know what I'm saying? So I think that
why not?
Well, that's 75 million people in front of me. That's my concern. 75 million beans in front of me, right? I'm just trying to use.
I would just make the argument that as we've seen Beanstalk play out in the world over the past 8.5 months or so, the dynamic that you're highlighting doesn't really take place.
So you're thinking that there's no way that so you're saying that there's a very, very high likelihood that my 75th million being in place will get paid out, and that's fine, and I totally
Well, it's not even that. If someone is willing to lend at 74 million, the marginal guy who's willing to lend at 75 million is actually probably more likely to lend because of the guy who lent at 74 million. If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. But I think that I went to the very back of the line, but I don't think you're going to get there is what I'm saying, unless you change the model of the way you sell these things is what I'm saying. So I think there needs to be discussion about these weedy parts here that the details here are very important. I don't think that just going in and just selling it the same way as previously is going to generate as much capital as if there were other options.
I hear what you're saying, but I would just push back and say that this model, and to be fair, this is a slight it change from the traditional model, but this structure generally has been the main driver of Beanstalk's success thus far. So we're not inclined to run away from it, instead play into it very much so.
Okay, I mean, I like I said, I think that it needs to be investigated a little bit. I know that you think this is the only way forward or the best way forward.
It's not the only way. It's the best way. It's the best way. And in fact, it's the best way because it's taking the core economic model and saying Beanstalk is going to continue to leverage the core economic model and not deviate from it. And if we talk about reinstilling confidence in Beanstalk at its core, think that it's much better for Beanstalk to play into the way that it works fundamentally than to run away from it.
Okay, but let's just say there's two instances, right? So one instance is you do it this way. I mean, I'll play devil's advocate. You only get like 10 million in line, right? That sow this or soil. So I'm sorry, I don't know what the terminology is. They basically that buy the first 10 mil. But if you started some other way where you basically bidded on like the way the pods are sold that I saw on the thing where like, oh, people are looking at these pod lines and looking at like how much you'd pay for each one. I would buy the 75th million. I'd start with 25 cents or a dime or something. And the whole lever system goes up. It's like the front of the line, people are going to pay 99 cents or 98 cents. And then it's.
So actually, there is something to be said here. One thing that we'd love to do in theory, not sure if we're going to be able to implement it in practice, is effectively having some sort of bidding system before it goes live, such that people can basically lock in their bid and say, well, at a given weather, I wanna lend $1 million, assuming that it's prior to this place in line. And you can basically have some sort of bidding system where people can check what the market is pricing things at, in theory, before the auction even starts.
Absolutely. Just look at your pod line that you have currently. I mean, I looked at that model and you can see like exactly how many pods are being sold at this price. And that would be the same thing where if you did some sort of auction like that, you'd be like, hey, this is where it's at. This is what I'm going to do. The one problem with that, I'll tell you, in experience with sort of things like this is people are going to wait till the last minute. So what you do is you have people bid blindfolded before and it locks their contract in sort of, and then if it hits that number, then they pay that price. I mean, it's very convoluted and complicated, but it gets you sort of like the best of all worlds where you get the most amount of capital and it gets the people their best prices that they're willing to pay. Because if you wait, if you do what you're saying, which is let people wait, and then at the very end, they're going to bid the last 5 minutes. They'll have bots the last 5 minutes and bid because not everyone, if it's a 3-day auction, the first day, no one's going to do anything if they know they can just wait until the last minute. So I think I see both angles. I just want people to consider it. I don't know which is the best. I would just
push back on that last statement that people are going to wait till the very end because the pod line's getting longer, right? So sure, you can wait, but people are going to get in line in front of you. And that's where the core economic incentive comes from when it comes to lending beans to Beanstalk. But totally agree with you that if we can get some bid system live for Beanstalk in advance for this soil, that would be optimal.
Well, it depends though, right? Because you don't sell all of them at the same, you can't sell the first one at a bid system and wait for the next one.
You can, because what you would do is you would have a bid. The bids basically accrue in the lead up to the actual auction, and then have those bids sort of deterministically based on whether or not people, whether the pod line grows greater than the maximum pod line length in the bid before the weather is reached, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, I do. I'm not sure. I need to think about it because I want the maximum amount of capital, and doing it that way, the way that, sort of, I don't know if that's the right direction either. The first way you guys were suggesting might be the better way because 75 million you're saying is going to hit, right? And people are going to be willing to get there. Let me think about it. My mind is never set. I always am open to ideas. So I'm. Let me think about it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Siege. So, I mean, for what it's worth, Publius, as I've thought through this, it seems like different parts of this new pod line have different incentives, just like different parts of the existing pod line have different incentives. Closer to the front of the pod line, you typically would have a lower weather rate. Now, obviously in the existing pod line, there's fluctuations in the weather rate that have happened over time as the rate has gone up and then started to come back down. But in the case of the fundraiser, the advantage of being at the front is that you're at the front. You are closest to having your pods harvested. Then at the back of the line, you've got the largest potential weather, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Correct.
So different incentives at different points in the fundraiser. So we finally made it to the 9 p.m. question. So again, if we were 2 hours behind before, we're now only 1 hour and 40 minutes behind. It's a good one, though. So Beandolf asks, are we concerned that the hacker might take the ETH that they took and dump it back into Bean?
No, not at all. The beans that they took have been removed. The Beanstalk contract still had approval to move all of the tokens or more tokens than they had in their wallet. So, it was possible to remove all of the beans from their wallet, which was done. So there's no way for them to redeposit.
I might not have made clear, or might not have heard. So so Beandolf was asking about the ether.
Oh, well.
So not being asked.
I think that would make sense for them. Like, they already have the money. So what do they get from putting it back in?
Beanstalk is a good investment, sir. Or might not be.
But, yeah, the point is, like, why would they want to... I mean, I literally can't imagine that being attractive to them. But, who knows?
Yeah, I tend to side with the other Publius too. Yeah, I mean, obviously it'd be kind of a wild thought for them to reinvest that, but I would say, I don't know, personal view, I would say that anything could happen. Would we? So, never mind. Probably not a question worth asking. Man, not seeing anyone in the queue. Okay. Red Candle Randy, 9 p.m. Can we consider delaying the silo exits and 1/3 pod payouts to the old line by a certain amount of time? For example, don't let the 100-day count start on day one. Give the investors and the new line about a week or a certain amount of bean mints before working the rest in.
Yes, we could do that, and if that was asked for by some capital, that would be possible.
All right. Okay, Valbean asks, will we have a bug bounty? Should it be a priority to set one up? And I'm gonna broaden this question. I would say, so bug bounty to me sounds like it's very much on the technical side or on the code side. Would we have something similar in terms of a governance bounty?
In short, there's a lot of effort happening across the people working on Beanstalk to try to figure out how to get as many eyes and looking at the contracts, and that includes bounties.
right, Castle Black is on stage. Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
We absolutely can.
All right. So I'm just wondering, is there any consideration of maybe having some kind of treasury funding like outside of the bean? Just so in case something like this happened, you can just simply like cover the loss.
No, there's never an intention to do that because then you're collateralized.
Right. All right, I'll just leave it as that then.
Right. Thanks for hopping up. So next question I see in the chat, Ahujat, again, a name I probably murdered, asks why the funding proposal is only 3 days. Sounds like we've covered that pretty thoroughly. Anything to add, Publius?
No, and I think if the questions are repeat recs, you should ignore them.
All right. Next I'm seeing is so Wonton asks, will circulating beans be replaced by funds? Now, I've already talked through that quite a bit. Yeah.
Don't tell me we're out of questions, Rex.
Oh man, the problem is I saw a question that was a reply. Okay, here we go. Okay, so Nick asks. So Nick prefaces, bit of a technical question here. How exactly did the exploiter address retroactively execute code within BIP 18 that led to the draining of funds from the Beanstalk contract?
Publius, do you want to hop in, or I mean, I guess I've go ahead, Publius.
So kind of maybe it's helpful to talk a little bit about how a diamond cut works. A diamond cut is the mechanism through which a diamond contract is updated. A diamond cut, kind of takes in three things. One is a list of facet cuts. Facet cuts, say add, remove, or replace these functions on these addresses. So this is how you would, add functionality, modify functionality, or remove functionality. The other two things it takes in are an address and call data. The address and call data correspond to the contract that the diamonds will run upon completion, upon running the diamond cut. So the diamond cut will, one, add, replace, remove functions, and two, execute a function in other code. And that's meant to help with things like migration. When we whitelist silo assets, we use, in a init contract. When we, pretty much every time we have a BIP, we use this init contract. So, in BIP 18, the init contract was set to the exploitation contract with, call data to call it. And, when the BIP was passed, that function on that contract was called. And, that's how they were able to run the code. And I guess, kind of the function in the contract that was ran, essentially said transfer all the funds from Beanstalk to this contract.
But in particular, the code that was actually executed was deployed almost immediately prior to the attack. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, it created a contract which was executed.
But the question is, there was an address at which code was deployed, and I haven't had a chance to look into this, but there was code. My understanding is that the code was deployed. The malicious code was actually deployed shortly before the attack was executed. Even the init or the diamond cut, the thing that it referenced, wasn't malicious until shortly prior to the attack. Or is that incorrect?
Yeah, not quite sure what you're referencing to. Gonna have to,
Understood. We'll circle back and try to get you guys a good answer on this.
All right. So the next question I'm seeing in the chat is from Oxwinger, and Oxwinger asks, "Is there a minimum fundraise threshold?"
No, not as of now.
Okay. Looking through. Running. Yeah, this is so Valbean asks, what if instead of taking the Ukraine money, we put it into the fundraise for them, and the Ukraine fund gets pods and a bigger donation at the end? Is that something that we would consider?
I mean, no reason to give out the pods if it's not necessary.
Very fair. Okay. See. They'll feel like okay. So Bean Bankman Refried asked if the three Publius, if all three of you could put your names and numbers, your Discord numbers, somewhere where they can be easily found, just in case we see other names pop up that we can verify them. Is there a particular
we should all have the Publius role. We should all have the Publius role. So
okay, that's fair.
That should be the main way to check.
Yep, that's very, very fair. There you go. If Publius reaches out to you asking you for your private keys, check to see if they have the Publius role first. Probably a good chance that if they're asking for private keys, they won't have it.
That is funny stuff, Rex.
Good times. And I feel like we are starting to get into the point of the chat where I'm seeing fewer and fewer questions.
But we got a hand up.
We do? Okay, I'm so busy looking through the chat that I didn't notice. Nifty Evo. All right, Nifty, I am bringing you on stage now. Come on up. All right, you're good to go. Oh, sweet PFP. Go ahead.
Thanks, man. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, I've just got kind of two questions about the the barn raise. Ideally, what sort of allocations are you considering pursuing? Are you thinking, maybe some 20% from venture, hoping for, maybe 30% from individuals and 50% from DAOs, or what do those numbers kind of look like?
I give that zero thought, basically. I don't give that any thought. The idea is Beanstalk doesn't care where the money comes from, whether it's a DAO or an individual or an institutional investor or anything of the sort. I mean, there is some inclination that there seems to be a lot of more institutional interest in Beanstalk now than there was prior, but have no sense of what that's going to translate into in terms of dollars.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. And then one follow-up question, if you don't mind. So in terms of kind of attracting institutional money, it's obviously going to be a combination of attractive returns from the protocol, which I've already seen a great proof of concept there. But then also, there's roadmap. I'm sure that obviously the past, like 56 hours or something have been, pretty much completely composed of looking at the barn. But what's the next thing on that roadmap once we get the protocol up and running again?
So generalized minting, convert, and the bean farm, which were imminent or around the corner, those are probably still priorities. I mean, this is a hiccup, but nothing really substantively changes if the protocol can get back up and running soon enough.
Great. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
And what I wouldn't give to be like neck deep in conversations about generalized minting again. Someday.
I know, man. The good old days.
Yes, that's right. Okay. So, let's, so Castle Black is back in the queue. I'm going to have them come back up. All right. You are back, Castle Black. But we're not hearing you. Castle Black still not hearing you. All right. Well, Castle, you may have to hop down. Oh. Hop down. How about, so still stuff going on tonight. Sounds like there's still some meetings and some stuff to try to get managed before the team calls it a night. So I think what we'll do is, I think we'll ask one more question. I want to give Castle Black another minute to hop back up. Oh yeah,
we just went below 100 people, so I guess we're losing steam fast.
We are. We're and I am like, I mean, the chat's great. It's fantastic and respectful and at times extremely funny. But I am having a hell of a time finding questions that are new at this point.
Well, Rex.
Nasjack, you back?
So, look,
you want to finish? You want to finish this out?
It sounds like we've ran out of questions. Look, there was one point I heard that you kind of discussed it, but I think it would just kind of be a fun way to end the call. But I kind of missed it when you discussed it. What would happen if we just, kind of seeded the ETH Uniswap pool with a little bit of money and just let anarcho-capitalism run amok It's just kind of like a joke to end. But I do actually kind of think that bean mechanics would prevail, and people would arbitrage. Because I actually have friends messaging me, "Yo, can I arbitrage this bean right now?" Anyways, so that's just a fun question.
So in theory, I mean, if you assume that the model works, there's nothing to say that it can't come back from literally zero. In practice, it's just a little harder than that because of the distribution of beans now. And furthermore, like there's one wallet has like 60 million beans or something. And beyond that, like all of the stock and stuff, it's kind of worthless. So now you'd have stock with no BDV under it. Nothing wrong with it per se, but I think that if there's a way to get some capital into Beanstalk sooner rather than later, that should probably be pursued instead.
Yeah, that's fair. It was more of a fun question.
The main reason is to try to recoup funds. Like, people had money stolen. So, like, the suggestion of, like, let the system just run. It's like, well, then everyone did have all their money stolen and there's no recouping any of it, basically.
Even if some people held? Like, if they held and just watched
they held from you can earn back from the future growth of Beanstalk, but, like, all of your current money is gone. So this is a question of whether there's an opportunity to recoup any of the current money and give a chance to earn seniorage going forward.
I see. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And people must have seen Beethoven hop up here because we're back over 100.
That's
people
right. They knew.
Enough talk, but Beethoven gets an audience.
He does.
Hey guys, how's everybody doing? Can you all hear me okay?
We can. So to give a quick introduction, so Beanstalk is lucky enough to have a couple pretty talented musicians amongst its ranks, Beethoven being chief amongst them. And with Bella Bean Talk, they form a powerful duo tonight. Is it? Yeah, that's right. Do we have both of you?
I don't know. Bean Talk was here a while ago. He was here for a while. Oh, yep, he's here in the chat. We're in separate places, unfortunately. But
okay. Are you taking tonight's solo?
I am taking tonight's solo, but you can expect a lot of great stuff rolling out from both of us very, very soon. So
if you want to take it away, the floor.
Yeah, well, here's just one example of this. So thank you all for sticking around. This has been really substantive for a 3.5 hour long conversation.
That's right.
Amazing. And this is just like a little tune that my hope is that it helps us get through these hard times and kind of align our gaze on the horizon and get excited for what's coming. So because good things are coming. Well, the farm was working wonders, Beat's future looking bright, and so many happy farmers getting richer overnight. Yeah, we were burning up the pod line, we were mitting to the nines, and we were hooting and a-hollering and feeling mighty fine. When that exploit knocked us on our backs and they thought that we'd stay down, but the hat's back on the head and seeds already in the ground. Well, we've fallen on some hard times, I ain't saying it ain't so. We had ups and downs and then just ups till several days ago. And that bean printer's quiet and I think that it's a sin. We gotta pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off and plug it right back in. Well, the silo's looking empty cause of some slimy hacker cuss, but the beans are only beans, the real riches lay with us. Cause it's the farm that makes the beans grow, and I think we all agree. We did it once in just 6 months, we can do it again in 3. So come down to the barn raising, we're working through the night. And when it's up, we'll raise our cup, and then it's back on to the fight. Cause our work is never over till the stocks all reach the moon. So come on down to the barn raising, and we'll all be laughing soon.
That was so good.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, there's going to be a recording of that very soon, tomorrow or the next day.
Awesome. Thank you, Beethoven, as always. Always appreciate it. Thank you to everybody that came out and stuck around. I mean, always great to have the really good discussion. Love to have the big crowd. Wish it was under different circumstances. Hopefully, again, not too far from now, this will be something of a painful memory, but a memory nonetheless. So Twitter Space coming up tomorrow night. We may very well have another Q&A Thursday. Stay tuned to the Discord. Watch the events in the Discord, and we'll have more information as it comes out. And we'll also be doing announcements as we get more stuff onto the calendar. And thanks again, everybody. Have a great night. Seriously, Beethoven, that was dope.
Thanks. I didn't realize we were the only two left. Oh, no, not. There's still plenty. Yeah, I mean, the best start comes from the worst times.
I think that's very fair. And this is going to be a great opportunity for us to really show what this community is made of. So
exactly.